Turn it on and rip the knob off.
Hey guys, it's episode 5 and we still be alive here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. I'm your host Ray Russell, and joining me as always, my cohort, my comrade, and at times, my accomplice, Steve Eckstat. Welcome back to the show.
Hey man, pleasure to be here. I'm happy to be back.
And Steve, we've got a pretty big show scheduled for today, so I'll try and run through the preliminaries here before we dive right into the festivities. I want to give a special thanks to our listeners out there, as your continued support is always appreciated. Please continue to spread the word of our podcast as we continue to grow our audience fan base. Fans of the show can follow the Grenade on Twitter at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Make sure to follow us now on Twitter for your shot at winning upcoming prize giveaways we have planned for the near future. Again, we are at Rasslin Grenade. We're also now on Facebook. Look up the Wrestling Memory Grenade on Facebook to follow and like us there as well. You can listen to the Wrestling Grenade on pretty much any podcast streaming service you like, from iTunes to Spotify to Google Pod, Stitcher, Overcast, and many, many more. I must once again thank Jason, Mickey, and the gang over at the RetroNetwork.com. I always have a great time when I'm visiting the Retro Network. I encourage you guys to stop over there too. You can follow the Retro Network on Twitter at TRN Social. They've got everything you can imagine, from articles to podcasts to videos, musical playlists covering just about everything from the good old days of eras gone by. There's always great new articles, discussions, and topics that really bring back some awesome memories for me personally. And all you horror fans out there, I believe the Retro Network is still on the search for a horror show podcast host. So if you're a real horror buff and have experience in the podcasting genre, make sure to contact Jason or Mickey and let them know you're interested in applying. I'd also recommend checking out the Wax Pack Flashback videos, where they open retro-era packages of trading cards and other fun things. And if you can't get enough of the wrestling talk here on The Grenade, I'd like to invite you all to give a listen to the House Show podcast over on the Retro Network, as the trio of Kevin, Maddie, and the Educator of Excellence take a look into the 1990s WWF, and more specifically, the In Your House pay-per-views. You can follow the House Show gang on Twitter at TRN House Show. I also want to be sure and mention our sponsors on the Retro Network. First, I want to talk to you about HalloweenCostumes.com. Right now on HalloweenCostumes.com, you can get 20% off any one item in their store by simply putting in the coupon code TRN202020. And I must say, I've been through their site and they've got everything from couples costumes to plus-size costumes to even ugly sweaters. Ladies, no matter your interests, no matter your shapes and curves, HalloweenCostumes.com has something for you. And gentlemen, that goes ditto. In fact, if you plan to go out for Halloween, I invite all the guys to purchase themselves something for 20% off, and then go ahead and grab your significant other a couple's costume to match. Or if you plan to stay in that night, maybe hop on over and do yourselves both a favor and purchase that significant other a sexy costume to stay in and have your own little Halloween party. I might suggest the Wonder Woman or Dark Vixen Red Riding Hood costume. That coupon code again is TRN202020 for HalloweenCostumes.com. That's 20% off any one item in their store. Offer ends October 31st, Halloween night, so stock up now. Also, if you head over to fun.com right now, you can get 15% off any one item of your choice by using the promo code TRN202015. That's 15% off any one item, which includes apparel, accessories, home and office, video games, toys, books, sports items, and more. So visit fun.com today and enter the promo code TRN202015 to save yourself 15% off any one item of your choice. And with that out of the way, Steve, we're coming off the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view watch-along from last week, and we've got 4 weeks of NWA to cover, the weekends of February 25th through March 18th, and that includes some 14 episodes of TV programming, as well as news and notes from behind the scenes, lots of soundbite goodies, the February 89 VIP Jobber of the Month, and the February 89 NWA Top 10.
Yeah, man, it sounds like we got a packed show, 14 awesome episodes that I enjoy watching. I'm also excited to hear our NWA Top 10. It's always a good time. And then also the VIP Jobber of the Month. I'm curious as to where we landed on that one as well. Lots of good stuff here.
So as Lance Russell would say, if we're going to get it all in, we better get it on, or something like that. So away we go. Before we go on into those TV shows, I wanted to talk about the fallout now from Chi-Town Rumble. Let's talk about the buy rate, which comes out here. As Chi-Town Rumble buy rate was a 1.5, only about 130,000 buys, which was down about 20,000 fans from Starrcade 88, which drew a 1.8 buy rate. Prior to that, the Great American Bash had a 2.2 buy rate for 180,000 fans. So it seems like a slow decline. And with George Scott in power and the way he's putting on the undercards, the way he's focusing on 2, maybe 3 feuds, and the rest of the card is just a bunch of guys thrown together with no real reason or rhyme. It just seems like it's a slow decline in buy rate here at the pay-per-view, but also in ratings on television.
Yeah, just going through these 14 episodes, you can kind of tell how George Scott books the show, and it's definitely not for 1989 or the 80s in general. It's like you said, like we've discussed numerous times, it's stuck in the 70s. I don't know, there's really no excitement or anticipation of anything to happen like on these shows. They feel flat, and I think a lot of that has to do with the booking and not necessarily the talent at all.
And some of the other notes as we travel into February here is Tony Schiavone and David Crockett. We both know are out. Tony gone to the WWF. David Crockett demoted from television, working behind the scenes now with the NWA. They're going to be replaced, at least Tony's replaced by Lance Russell here in the next couple of weeks. And Joe Pedicino is also reportedly heading in, which he does eventually debut here within the next couple of weeks as well, and sort of in the NWA's version of maybe the event center, the WWF event center, if you will. It's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out, how that goes over. Just another idea they seem to be taking from the WWF. I think it's great that they're taking some of these ideas, but some of these have been, I don't know, the opposite of a home run.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the notes I had down is Pedicino coming in doing Pedicino knows, and they're talking about shows that are coming up. And on paper, it's a great way to push your house shows, which is where all your money was made back then. And the way the WWF does it, they hype the big matches and they get the good guys on there cutting promos, whereas here, it just seems like Joe Pedicino's rehashing the same thing over and over, and they cut it to the same people. Like Missy Hyatt, we see her like 3 times hyping a contest to get the Music City Showdown. So on paper, it's a good idea, but if you don't execute it well, it's useless.
And I guess we'll see how that goes here in the coming weeks. The Championship Wrestling Saturday morning program is going to be changing over to the syndicated version of the main event show by March. So again, David Crockett on the way out, so we lose the Championship Wrestling program. In other news, it's reported that most of the big names have re-signed at this point under the new Turner contracts. The names refusing to sign at this point are the Midnight Express, Jim Cornette, and Barry Windham. They all haven't come to an agreement yet, and that's very interesting as you follow all of these guys and their contracts over the next couple of months.
Yeah, not much to say with that one.
Paul Jones also on his way out, at least on television. He might still be working behind the scenes, but he's on his way out as far as a manager role goes. As his last night, he finished up at the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view, managing the Russian Assassin against Michael Hayes. Paul Jones had been immune for so long from being fired during the Jim Crockett reign due to him being a stooge for Crockett and being there for just so long. One of the rules was Dusty Rhodes wasn't allowed to dismiss him, so that's why we got the Jones Army nonsense and being paired against Jimmy Valiant, that whole never-ending angle on the undercard. But now Paul Jones gone, unless, I'm sure there's a couple Russian Assassin matches here already recorded prior to the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view, but for all intents and purposes, Paul Jones gone from television.
Yeah,
we also know
say goodbye.
We also know the Great Muda's headed in. Dave Meltzer reports that he'll be arriving here shortly. Of course, when he does appear, it's not built up. It's just kind of thrown on TV, and we'll get to that much later in the show. But I just thought that was interesting, a bit of news to kind of spicing things up, that Great Muda will be here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Definitely one of those guys that I was looking forward to when we chose this year to watch and just dissect a little bit and just enjoy. He's a rare talent.
And there's reports of them wanting to move out of the studio, Turner wanting them to move to Center Stage Theater, at least temporarily, while they set something up at CNN Center permanently, which obviously never happens. But Center Stage Theater holds about 750 fans, and that's planned for the month of April here in '89. So it's going to be interesting to see how the dynamic of everything changes, how the feeling and the look and everything changes once they move from the studios where they've been at for so long over to Center Stage Theater.
Yeah, I know we differ on this, and I'm sure it's something we'll talk about later on when it happens, but I think it's a needed change, whereas you're kind of on the opposite side there. Again, we'll talk about that later.
All right, I guess, and that should do it. So I guess we get right into the TV programs for the weekend of February 25th, 1989. We'll kick off with the NWA Pro Show. Bob Caudle and David Crockett. Yes, David Crockett is still there, people. Show kicks off with a quick promo by the Fantastics. I don't know what the hell's going on with these guys. You have them on your roster. You're not using them at all. At least feed them to the SST. What a great match that would. Could you imagine a 15, 20-minute match between the Fantastics and the SST right out of the gate? I mean,
sign me up.
I don't understand what George Scott, or I hate using that guy's name so damn much, but what him or whoever's making these decisions to keep the Fantastics off TV, or only using them on syndication in 2 to 3 minute squash matches when everybody else is doing 6-minute squash matches. It just blows my mind. I don't know what's going on with the Fantastics here, but obviously they won't be here much longer, and we'll get to that obviously also later in the show. Michael Hayes over Robbie Weiss with works the crappy armbar for about 4 minutes, then just ends it randomly with a DDT about 5 minutes into the match. Another great Michael Hayes match, an armbar and then a DDT.
Yeah.
Dr. Death and Kevin Sullivan in tag team action over Bob Emery and Bill Holliday. They basically tear Holliday apart. Sullivan uses the old Ole Anderson standing armbar repeatedly throughout the match. Doc actually comes off the top rope with a shoulder block. I hadn't seen that before, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
He sets up the Oklahoma Stampede. He rams, but instead ties Holliday's leg up in the Tree of Woe. So it was a nice little tease for the finish. And then it was also a nice setup for a tag team type move, allowing Sullivan to come in and hit the Tree of Woe. And then Sullivan ends the match with a hammerlock on Holliday. Match goes 7 minutes.
That's way too long for these guys. I mean, they're powerhouses and they're supposed to be feuding with the roadies, and they go 7 minutes with 2 jobbers. These should be like 3-minute squashes with their power moves and be done with it.
We get a promo from Rick Steiner. I felt in this promo that he's becoming harder to understand. Like, the way he's being told to present his character, it's just harder to understand what he's saying. And he's physically starting to act different. Like, now he has like a twitch, or kind of cocks his head sideways. It's just a completely different Rick Steiner. I don't know how this just happened overnight, but it is what it is at this point. Steiner's lost his belt at this point to Rotunda. This is an insert promo they've probably recorded after the pay-per-view and placed it into this show. We get a match with the Russian Assassins over Bob Cook and Mike Thor. Assassins, obviously, like I said, already done. You know this is pre-recorded. Tony Schiavone's even the ring announcer here. More arm bars here. I don't know if this show was Armbar Mania, but these guys, this is the 3rd match in a row, and all we've seen is arm bars for 3 matches straight. The demolition finish from the Assassins ends it on Thor in about 4.5 minutes. The crowd, it was hilarious. The crowd actually had some fun here. They pop huge when it ends. Even David Crockett acknowledges that they were popping because the match was over. And that was the best part of the match, was that it was over.
Yeah, I mean, this first half of this show was trash, and it gets even worse with this Rotunda promo coming up. Man, it's brutal.
Yeah, Mike Rotunda, simple interview. He's the TV champion again. Rest of the promo made no sense. He literally said sentences that made no sense. It's typical singles Rotunda promo with no Sullivan or no Ted DiBiase to help him through it, and he struggled here. And I don't know, when you have an ability to do retakes, this would have been a retake for me. There are certain guys that you have to argue even today, where everybody doesn't want anything to be scripted. There are some guys that are just better off scripted, and Mike Rotunda probably should have been scripted.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was just, he said Steiner was stupid, and that's why he's out of the varsity club. I think that's all he relies on, was just calling people stupid, idiots, and morons. And
cheap heat, man.
Like you said, yeah, when Sullivan and DiBiase weren't there to help him, he had nothing. That was all he had. So yeah, this is brutal.
So follow me here. We'll ignore the varsity club squash match, but we kick off the show with Michael Hayes. We move into a Russian Assassins match, followed by a Mike Rotunda promo, and now we get Ivan Koloff and the Junkyard Dog. Who booked this?
I have no idea, but I put on my notes Koloff on it. This had to be recorded in January, early February.
Ivan Koloff.
That's my guess.
Yeah. Ivan Koloff and the Dog over David Heath and Pretty Boy Lloyd. Koloff was the workhorse, even his twilight years in the business. If you watch him, he's not 100 miles an hour, but he's nonstop motion. He's constantly doing something in the ring, and I give him props for that. Koloff was just a machine till the end. Junkyard Dog comes in to clean up with a thump at the end of the match. Classic Dog there. He did very little else in the match. 5 minutes. The thump on David Heath ends it.
The only note I have on this one is they showed a woman in the front row or something, and Crockett's like, "Oh yes, we have the best here in the NWA," and I just thought that was pretty disgusting. I mean, it's one thing to show the women, but when you got commentators,
well, they're pushing it. Somebody's telling them to push it. I mean, I don't know what that directive is, but they're certainly.
It's disgusting.
We move on to the next match: Steve Casey versus Mike Jackson. Match only goes 3 minutes. Mike Jackson looked good. Casey hit an awful sit-out clothesline during the match, an awful super kick, Russian leg sweep. He learned the float over this time. Still not Brad Armstrong level Russian leg sweep, but Casey gets the win. This was not a very good match, and that's saying something because Mike Jackson was great at making anyone look good.
Yeah.
And Steve Casey, I mean, I know it's been years now, and I know I'm sure it's gone, but mustaches work on some people. Mustaches work on a lot of people. But if you've ever heard the phrase, you've got a caterpillar on your lip, that describes Steve Casey rocking a mustache. It just doesn't work on Casey, and trying to use his brother's stash to get over it just doesn't work for me.
I agree. It definitely does not work with Steve Casey.
And the crappy promos continue from here. Bob Caudle with Michael Hayes now, more plagiarizing of song lyrics, Baby We Were Born to Love, Bad to the Bone. Now he's recycling some of the songs. He's running out of songs he knows, I guess. And we move to the TV main event, Fantastics over the Terminators, so I'm still determined to figure out who exactly they are. Did you ever notice the Fantastics theme? And I've known this for 30 years, but I never really have made conversation on this. Did you ever notice in the Fantastics theme that they actually have their ring introduction done inside their theme music?
I did pick that up on this show, and then I made a note of it the next time we seen them. I thought it was pretty cool. It makes them stand out a little bit. I know they're doing nothing with them, and they're going to be gone soon, but once I heard that, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. It's different. I don't know. It kind of establishes where they're from. I know they're a California team or City of Angels or whatever they were introduced as, so it fit, and I liked it. It was different.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard it. It had to have been nearly 30 years ago on a Turner Home Entertainment. I think maybe when they were working against the Midnight Express. Might have been Bash 88 or something like that. Yeah, I remember the first time I ever heard that. I thought that was interesting, but it's been so long. When I heard it here, it just brought back those memories. You know, it was funny. If you look at the times in all these matches, you know, they go 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. The squashes are getting longer based on George Scott's booking. Now, Steve Casey goes 3 minutes, and for very good reason. But this match here, the Fantastics match, against the Terminators, who are bigger guys, and you could buy that this match would go a few more minutes. This match gets 2 minutes before they hit the old Quebecers, Le Cannonball. Tommy Rogers gets the win here. So it's like I said, clearly they're wanting the Fantastics to just quit, it feels like to me.
Yeah, I don't understand it. You got, like we talked about in the earlier shows, they're trying to build teams with Hayes and all these other guys, just random teams thrown together. And you got a well-established tag team that was just your U.S. champions not even 3 months ago, and you got nothing for them. It's sad.
There's no excuse when you have a team that talented, that level of talent, and you need a babyface team. But instead, you're trying to throw every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the book with Michael Hayes to try to come up with something when you have the Fantastics right in your lap. It's terrible. Just terrible. As Jim Ross would say, terrible. Just terrible.
You're worse than David Crockett, you know.
That's terrible.
So we move over to Worldwide for February 25th, and they have the most gaudiest, god-awful green screen in the history of green screens, as it looks like Jim Ross is supposed to be like high atop an arena looking down on an arena in the background. And the odd pairing of Michael Hayes and Dick Murdoch both come out to open the show to cut promos. It's just the whole thing is just mesmerizing for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Horrendous.
And the last episode ended with a Fantastics match. This episode kicks off with a Fantastics match, and they take on another pretty solid enhancement team, George South and Gary Royal. It's basically the Cruel Connection without the gear. Nice blind tag by the heels here. They get a little heat on the Fantastics. I like little things like that for the upper tier job guys. It makes the match more entertaining for me. I thought it was kind of unique. The Fantastics did the Hardy Boy, one of the Hardy Boy tricks. Rogers jumps off Fulton's back and does a Thez press on the South. It actually looked like Rogers tried to jump off of Bobby Fulton's back with a clothesline, but when he didn't sync up right, when he didn't land on South right, he turned it into the Thez press. I thought that was pretty cool ad-libbing, and he got the win with that. The match went about 4 minutes or so.
Tommy Rogers is great. I mean, he's so smooth, so clean in the ring. And even if there's a mistake, he can hide it because he's that talented. Just a really underappreciated guy that is great.
I think Tommy could have done a lot more. You know, I think obviously one of his detriments was likely his height, his size, unfortunately. And then of course, you know, they weren't the Fantastics weren't known to be great talkers, but Bobby Fulton was pretty good, and I think he carried the talking when the promos came. But yeah, inside the ring, Tommy Rogers was an amazing talent. And we go to Dick Murdoch over the Terminator. It's one of the tag team of the Terminators. This is the one with the bleach blonde goatee, which I had mentioned before. Still don't know who he is. Still very curious if anybody out there can help us out. He seems very comfortable when in control in the match. He doesn't look confused. He doesn't look lost. I don't know that he's a long-time veteran. I don't buy that at all, but it's interesting to watch him work in the ring. He seems to know what to do. He doesn't get lost like some of the jobbers when they're given offense and they don't exactly know how to respond.
Yeah.
He looked okay here. This is the match where, and I grabbed a video clip of it, and I'm going to put it up on Twitter, of Dick Murdoch does a kip up in the match. He just does it so flawlessly and just stands up like it was no big deal.
Oh my God. Jim Ross marked out over this too. Like, he was like a kip up from a guy this size. I'm like, I was sitting there watching it, you know, kind of just going through the motions of watching these shows. And I heard Murdoch did a kip up, and I'm like, no way. So I rewound it and looked at it again. And I'm like, my God, that dude shouldn't be able to do that. That's just insane. It's great.
Yeah. And he's just, was one of the best, one of the damn best, man. And, this match ends with, Murdoch hitting a delayed brainbuster, going over in 4 minutes. Promo from the Fantastics. Once again, Tony Schiavone doing the interviewing there. Again, Tony's gone, so this is obviously pre-taped, probably prior to February. In reality, the Fantastics will be gone here shortly as well. So Tony's gone, and he's interviewing a couple guys they're going to be out the door here in a matter of weeks as well. So it's kind of pointless to even throw this into the show.
Yeah, makes no sense.
Well, it makes no sense to me because they've given the Fantastics promo time now on these last 2 shows. They have no direction. They're not doing anything. They're being used worse than Sting and Butch Reed and those guys, because at least those guys are being more prominently featured on the TBS program. The Fantastics have basically been withered away to just syndicated tapings. So kudos to them for getting out of there. Hopefully they made a few more bucks over in Japan and whatnot after they left the NWA, but it's unfortunate that they just had this taken away from them.
I was just going to say, there's a couple guys in that boat that we'll get to a little later. Makes no sense.
Sting over Mike Thor, Stinger Splash, Scorpion Deathlock in 4 minutes. If you listen to the crowd, Sting is so over. I think we can look down the roster and it becomes clear. Had Steamboat not been signed, they would have had to put Sting in that position against Flair for the Chi-Town Rumble. But then again, George Scott did nothing with Sting during his tenure as Booker, so who knows what the heck that dude, would have done with Sting, or how that would have even turned out, Sting versus Flair. I don't see them handing Sting the title at Chi-Town Rumble, so it's still great that Steamboat came in, but yeah, it's just disgusting what's going on with Sting, the misuse of Sting at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I put on my notes here that he just sticks out from everyone else in the company. The fans love him. He's energetic. He's different in the ring. He may not be the best wrestler, but he does things that look different than what everybody else is doing. He's taken the NWA from the mat-based, slow plotting, build a story type match to a high intensity, fast paced, all these things, and the crowd's eating it up. Like, he has the crowd in the palm of his hands at all times, and they're doing absolutely nothing with him. Like, what are you doing?
We get another Russian assassin squash. This time's over Mike Justice, and they refer to this guy as Robbie Heath. It's definitely not David Heath. I'm wondering if it's Robbie Weiss, because I don't remember a Robbie Heath. But nevertheless, they're still burning off old matches. The way NWA taped, it wouldn't surprise me at all if these guys are still working on TV by Halloween Havoc. Victory ends this one with a middle rope elbow on Heath in about 3 minutes, and one of many great promos from Sting over these episodes of TV. He didn't even feel like painting his face here. He's standing in front of the green screen with Jim Ross for the promo. Sting, man, he has a collection of some promos here on these next several weeks that just make absolutely no sense.
Yeah, this promo kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, he had that match with Flair in '88, and
right.
He says in '88 he was just goofing off with Wyndham and Flair and all. And then, so he's going to be doing even more goofing off in 1989. I'm like, you're not even taking this serious. Like, it's your job. You should take it serious. And we hear goofing off way more. And then, like, by the end of this run that we do here, these 14 episodes, he's trying to backtrack that statement that he made.
Yeah.
To flip it a little bit. But yeah, he's like, I'm going to do even more goofing off in '89. And I'm just like,
you have to think that a Ric Flair or someone of that stature probably heard of a couple of these promos and maybe came to him and said, dude, what are you doing? You're hurting yourself. You take this business seriously. If you want to be a star, you have to act like a star. And I really liken Sting's promos to Mike Rotunda's promos. They never make sense. The only difference is Mike Rotunda has no personality and Sting's full of personality. So it's the same promos. They're just delivered in different ways.
Yeah, it's almost that Piper syndrome where it doesn't matter what exactly he's saying. He just delivers it in a way that makes you want to listen. But I'm paying more attention, and I'm wondering if...
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it's very likened to that as far as the energy goes with Piper. But Piper made sense when Piper talked, even though he was all over the place. He could cut a hell of a promo. And here, Sting had no idea what was gonna come. I think he had no idea what he was gonna say next.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I'm just wondering if Flair got to him. He's like, look, dude, I spent 45 minutes trying to get you over on the Clash 1, and we got that. So you can't say you're goofing off. Like, that's offensive. I mean, I would find that offensive if I was those guys. So I don't know what he meant by it or what he was trying to do. I get he's from California, the surfer laid back and chill, doesn't really care about anything.
Right.
I understand that, but you can't go out there and say you're just goofing off. I mean, that makes no sense at all.
Well, it's not going to help your character at all. It didn't offend me, but it didn't help his character at all. That caught my ear too when I heard it. I'm like, that's the wrong thing. Somebody should have took you to promo class too.
We're redoing that one.
We got another Ivan Koloff and Junkyard Dog tag team match, this time over Bob Cook and Rick Diamond. Ivan has no business as a babyface. He's an amazing machine, like I said, in the ring, but man, I don't care what the storyline is. I don't even know that he got over when he turned face on Paul Jones. JYD, so lazy here, didn't even decide to use the thump this week. Just caught Diamond with a headbutt and dropped down and pinned him. Oh no, you know what? This is the match where he didn't even bother to cover him. So Dog never even literally left his feet even for the cover because he hits the guy with a headbutt and then just puts his foot on him and pins him. Just absolutely lazy. And Koloff and Dog pick up the win in 4 minutes, but oh my God.
He's getting paid, man.
We'll see how much longer that lasts. We'll see just how much longer that lasts.
Yeah.
Michael Hayes in the spinning wheel of partners. This time he gets Steve Casey as his partner. Oh boy. They take on Billy Holiday and Kip Montana, the future Billy Gunn. I think this is the match where he slaps him and Hayes no-sells it, and it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to make himself look like a strong guy by not getting up on the slam and then pushing his opponents off. I don't know what Hazy's doing.
And that reminds me, and I can't wait till we get to that much later on, several months away, but that reminds me of when the Freebirds reform and Hayes' take on trying to be the Nude Road Warriors and how well that got over with Dr. Death and company. So I can't wait for that. But
oh my God.
But yeah, once again, Michael Hayes with yet another random partner. Casey is just too green to be in the big time, but he has Hayes to fall back on here. So that can't be pretty. Typical Hayes crap, maybe even less offensive than usual, and still not good. Casey blows a flying head scissors. Then he holds Holiday in a headlock, calling spots for entirely too long in a squash match. The end result of the spot he was calling? A schoolboy. He literally holds the guy in a headlock for like 20 seconds and then calling spots and then just does a schoolboy. Just, oh my God. This was a mess.
Trash.
Fast tags at the end of the match. Lots of arm work again. Why? Like, why so many crowd shots? I mean, not so much in this match. I didn't mind the crowd shots in this match, but this show was crowd shot heaven. I mean, or hell, depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, there was as much crowd shots as there was action.
Yeah, I mean, that's not saying a lot. There wasn't a lot of action on either one of these shows to start this run.
They start finishing things up in this match. This match goes way too long, by the way, with these guys in the ring. And another awkward Steve Casey super kick this week. Hayes tags in the Seal of Thunder as usual instead of get the young guy over. Hayes with the DDT on Billy Gunn. Gets the win in about 6 minutes. It was a great DDT bump, by the way. Like, Billy Gunn took that DDT badass. So, yes, there's a pun there, and I didn't even intend that. So this is where I made a note. And if you look at the last couple shows, if you notice a pattern on this show and the pro prior to it, these are the same guys as the pro taping that were on this worldwide taping. And it's basically everyone not in an angle or big storyline or participating in the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view. Since this was recorded so much earlier, obviously it doesn't give away any spoilers by putting all these guys on the shows, but also made for some really crap shows.
Yeah, I noticed. It's like these are pretty much the same matches or the same guys that were on the first show. It was almost like if you watched one, you definitely didn't have to watch the other. I guess it's smart in the sense you don't want to give away any spoilers. I know there's title changes and things like that would get spoiled from tapings like later on.
Right.
When they would tape like 6 or 8 weeks out and they'd get confused, and then if you change your mind, you can't do it. So that makes sense, but it made for some terrible syndication for sure.
And for anyone wondering, hey, where are the sound bites this week? Guys, there was no Cornette, no Paulie, no Flair, no Steamboat, no Luger, no Wyndham, no Roadies, no Varsity Club, unless you count the Rotunda promo, which I don't. Don't worry, there's sound bites coming, and in fact, there's a couple of them, a couple of train wreck sound bites coming on this next episode of World Championship Wrestling here for February 25th, which we kick off right now. And the show starts off with highlights of Ricky Steamboat winning the world title at Chi-Town Rumble from Flair. Jim Ross promotes the show, and he builds up this big interview with an international star later in the program, and that gets over like a fart in church for me once we get to that segment when I find out who it is. But show kicks off with some more of the same. This time it's Michael Hayes and the Junkyard Dog over the Nightmare and El Negro. This is where we start having Hiro Matsuda at ringside. He's watching the match. He's scouting Michael Hayes. And DDT on El Negro by Hayes goes over. The match goes 6 minutes. What do you think about Hiro Matsuda scouting Michael Hayes?
I mean, I don't know what he's looking for, but I don't think he's gonna find it in Michael Hayes. I did like Magnum; he was really pushing it. Like, not Matsuda's looking for anything and everything. He has the Japanese money to do whatever he wants. So Magnum did a really good job of selling it. I'm just not buying it.
The only reason I buy it is because he was looking at Hayes instead of the Junkyard Dog. I think had he looked at the Junkyard Dog, I would have just thrown my papers up in the air and been done with the program. So at least it was Michael Hayes. But yeah, there is so much other talent on the roster he should be scouting before Michael Hayes. But it is what it is, and that'll continue on as the storyline progresses.
I would have liked it if he came out and just looked at a bunch of different people. Maybe not do it just once.
Right.
And that way you kind of don't know who he may get in his back pocket. It could have been a number of guys. Maybe they have him come out and look at Rick Steiner.
Right.
Or, Eddie Gilbert, something like that. That way you just kind of get thrown off. When he comes out and he's looking at Hayes only, you kind of figure that's going to lead to something.
Yeah, there was no tease or chicanery to fool the fans. It is what it is at this point. We get Butch Reed over Chris Powers. I don't recall ever seeing Chris Powers before, but he looked like a bag of nothing, but he did some decent bumps in the match, so I'll give him that much. And Reed goes over with the flying shoulder block in 4.5 minutes. We get highlights from the Chi-Town Rumble. They're showing the frickin' finishes of all the matches. And the Steiner's promo, which was edited out of the pay-per-view. So they include the Scott and Rick Steiner promo explaining why Rick Steiner is the way he is. And they're showing the frickin' finishes of the pay-per-view matches less than a week after the pay-per-view right here on TV. What is up with that, dude?
I have no idea. I would be so furious if I just paid $25 for a pay-per-view or whatever the cost was. And 6 days later or 5 days later, whatever the case may be, I can just get the matches for free. Like, if I paid for the pay-per-view to see the TV title match, you could have just saved your money and watched it on Saturday night. I have no idea why you would do this. And I'd be curious to see if the Great American Bash, how their buy rate is later on. Because if I'm a fan and I just paid the pay-per-view, then they give everything away over the next 2 or 3 weeks of TV.
Don't forget Wrestle Wars next, though. You got Wrestle War before the Bash.
Yeah, Wrestle War.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't even pay for that pay-per-view. They're just going to give it away on TV next week.
That's an excellent point, and I just...
So why would I pay?
And it doesn't end here, because even though they show these highlight packages, instead of showing just great action from some of the matches, they show the finishes. They actually, over the next couple weeks on all the different shows, managed to show damn near the whole pay-per-view. I don't believe they show too many matches in their entirety, but they show 2/3 of each match with the finishes intact. I have no idea what the hell's going on here.
They're smart they didn't show the Hayes match. But
yeah, they did leave that out.
And the Reed and Sting match. But you get all that potentially free 2 or 3 weeks later. Just give it time. You could splice together the pay-per-view.
Magnum TA interviews Eddie Gilbert. This is where Eddie Gilbert brings back Missy Hyatt as his valet. She's wearing shades to match Eddie, or either that or she has a hangover, which I believe either one. She's back because Eddie keeps getting screwed. Insert your own jokes there. Gilbert says the First Family is back. Of course, the First Family had originated in the UWF with Gilbert, Rick Steiner, Sting. Eddie Gilbert goes into the ring for a squash match against Rick Connors. Connors actually been around a long time. He'd been a long time enhancement guy, and he worked some of the Outlaw promotions. It feels like Gilbert's starting over from scratch here based on that promo he cut and on commentary. If you follow the commentary even of this match, they're rebuilding Gilbert, which is kind of weird considering he was just over a month ago.
I mean, it's sad. This dude was getting some of the biggest pops, and he was right there. And then he introduced Steamboat as his partner, and he kind of lost all his momentum with that. He basically just transferred that to Steamboat, and it didn't really work for Steamboat in the sense that the crowd loved it. It definitely didn't. So they completely dropped the ball, and I don't think they ever regain it with Eddie Gilbert the rest of '89.
Gilbert hits an awful-looking hot shot on Connors. All Connors' fault. He clearly didn't want to take the move. Took a terrible bump. Eddie knew it sucked, so he picked Connors up and did it again. It sucked again, but this time Eddie just makes the cover and takes it home. Gilbert goes over. 6-minute squash. More highlights of Chi-Town Rumble. This time it's the Flair and Steamboat match. Ricky's in the promo of Steamboat after the match, where he's backstage with the champagne and whatnot. If you want to check that out, go back to episode 4. We did the watch-along of the Chi-Town Rumble. And here we go with the promo Jim Ross promised us at the top of the show. It's the interview with the internationally renowned superstar, the Iron Sheik. And Sheik comes out and he starts naming promotions he was champion at. Then he, name drops his amateur credentials. He speaks some of his Farsi, Persian, or whatever he's
I don't know what he was saying.
That's pretty much it. It was a paint-by-numbers Sheik promo, if you've ever heard one.
Yeah, I love listening to him talk, but it's unfortunate we have to see him wrestle in 1989. But I like hearing him talk, whether it makes sense or not. It doesn't matter to me.
Well, whether you like it or not, Steve, I grabbed a soundbite of that promo, and I want everyone to listen to it right now.
Well, Mr. Rice, it's my pleasure to come from 10,000 mile, oldest country in the world, Tehran, Iran, to the America, a special toughest, roughest area, NWA. I heard a lot of people talking about Iron Sheik. I don't have to talk about myself. Intelligent American like yourself, every human being in this country know about Iran. They know Iran by two things, oil and wrestling. Especially the Iron Sheik, the youngest start Olympic champion 1968 Mexico City, AWA, NWA, whatever. Every intelligent American know about the Iron Sheik, AAU, Pan American. I've been through, I saw A to the Z. Now, I heard Mr. Ricky Steamboat, he is a new champion, beat Mr. Ric Flair, another American. But remember, Mr. Steamboat, the Iron Sheik is not American. I am from Ayatollah Khomeini country. خدمت همه شنوندگان ایرانی عزیز سلام عرض میکنم. همه دنیا پهلوانای ایران رو میشناسه، مخصوصا the Iron Sheik خسرو وزیری. Ricky Steamboat, I want to look at me very, very good. Look at me. Ricky Steamboat, I told you and I told you again, you beat one America, but this body is not America. This is from Ayatollah Khomeini country. I am here for one reason. Mr. Steamboat, whatever, Ric Flair, toughest rapper, whatever who is in NWA, I'm already excited. Ricky Steamboat, remember, you wrestling, you're going to find out about the Iron Sheik, Iran, number one, Ayatollah, number one, USA, look at me.
I don't think he even knows what promotion he's in right there. I mean, that dude's in his own world.
I don't think so either. Ross did him no favors.
No. And the only thing I just caught this time when I just listened to the soundbite right now that I didn't catch before, I saw him slip his name into when he was speaking that Persian. At the end of it, he goes, Khosrow Fasiri. So I thought that was kind of cool that he slid that in there like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. It was a paint-by-numbers promo with Iron Sheik, and you're going to get more of them. No, not in soundbites, just if you're watching the program. I promise everyone that is the only Iron Sheik soundbite, at least on this show. If he does something terrible on another show, I can't make the same promise.
I'm here for it.
We get Danny Spivey over Tom Pilner, power bomb, side slam, backdrop driver, boss man slam. Spivey murdered Piffner, 3.5 minutes. It was great.
Yeah, any more of these.
Absolutely. I made a note here just real quick. I don't really know the logistics behind it, but Jim Ross mentioned during this match that he forgot to say happy birthday to twin fans Linda and Glinda. He apologizes here in this match. He says he didn't forget their phone number, though. Magnum tells Jim he doesn't forget anything important. So I thought that was like kind of Magnum's way of crapping on him. He's like, Jim, you don't forget anything important. So
wow.
But Magnum sounds really good here. And I think I remember many years ago reading about a Linda and Glinda like super fans or something. I don't know. I don't know if I'm remembering something different or whatever, but yeah, I heard that promo and it was just funny the way Magnum shot it down. Like, Jim, if it was important, you would have remembered it. So he wasn't trying to be a heel. He was just being honest. I thought Magnum sounded really good here. He's doing a really good job on commentary. They follow the Spivey match up with another interview. This time Magnum TA interviews Dick Murdoch. He seems to be out there having a good time. He could have easily pulled off the same run he had with Adonis in 1984 WWF right here in 1989, I think. He just hasn't changed. He's doing kip-ups. He's doing drop kicks. The guy could still go. He could have easily been plugged in with the right partner and had a run here even in 1989, I think.
I don't know if he can do it like a major singles run, but definitely a tag run could have definitely done him some wonders.
And I guess at this point they had booked Dick Murdoch to take on Butch Reed for the Clash, because Murdoch calls out Reed for the Clash, but that match actually doesn't even happen. So we'll move on to the next match, which is Dick Murdoch with a squash win over Keith Steinborn in 4.5 minutes with a simple elbow drop. Doing one for Dusty, baby, dropping that elbow. I don't know if you paid attention during the promos. And all throughout these shows, last week's show and this week's show, they're really hard selling everyone's history from the Mid-South territory for this upcoming Clash show. Mm-hmm. It's a damn shame they're not really promoting the actual event. They're not saying Clash of the Champions live on TV on this such and such a date. They're just talking about this show in New Orleans.
Yeah.
It's just, but
yeah, Ross would always position and like, oh, we're heading back to the Mid-South area, and that's when he would, and then they go talking about their history there, and they, I don't even know what show they're talking about. Is this just like a random house show?
Yeah,
or what?
And it's done specifically that way because we'll get into that later on. George Scott doesn't want to promote the Clash of the Champions, and that becomes his own problem in the long run. As well as we go on, we'll see what happens with that, but. Dan Spivey's back for another promo. If you like the Howdy Doody on your coconut promo from the last time I played one of these sound bites of Spivey, I've got another doozy here for you right now.
And the newest member of the Varsity Club standing beside me, Dangerous Danny Spivey.
Well, Magnum, it's great belonging to the Varsity Club, the elite club, the ruler of the wrestling world. Mike Rotundo, Dr. Death, Kevin Sullivan, and myself, we're going to control the NWA. What we say goes. And if people don't believe us, wait till you get in the ring with us. Because we like to hurt people. We don't mind breaking somebody's bones or sending somebody in a limo to the hospital. Because that's what we do best. You guys get ready. And beware, because the Varsity Club is fixing to control the NWA. So people, get ready, because Dangerous Dan is on the war. And get ready, Lex Luger, Sting, Fantastics, and Road Warriors. Road Warriors, get ready.
Dude, the sound bites of Spivey's promos do him no justice. You people need to get on the WWE Network. You need to watch these promos. His mannerisms are absolutely amazing. When he pauses before he says beware or whatever it is, he says, he looks like something terrible, awful is happening off screen, and it's just insane.
It's hard to describe it unless you watch it. Like, his eyes are bugging out of his head. His mouth is huge as it is, and you can see all his teeth. He looks like a madman. He really does. And then I think the fans started talking.
Yeah,
that totally messed him up. Because he was sitting there listening to see what they were saying, and then he totally lost his train of thought and just kind of rehashed what he was saying. But man, by the time these 14 episodes are over, I'm loving me some Dan Spivey. Man, he is awesome.
Spivey is unintentionally funny and awesome. So yeah. And as much as I mentioned last episode that I would love to see Spivey and Dr. Death team up at some point, how about we get a American Express reunion from the WWF? Dan Spivey and Mike Rotundo, when Rotundo came back after he left with Wyndham as the U.S. Express, he came back, people might not remember, and teamed with Dan Spivey as the American Express. How over would that be? All right, I have my answer. And the show goes on. We have Kendall Windham over Keith Hart. I think this is Keith Hart's first appearance here. This is not the Keith Hart of the Hart family. This is not Bret Hart's brother, Keith Hart. But Keith Hart was a jobber that popped up quite a bit in 89, 90, 91 WCW. And he was a decent hand at doing jobs. And I think this is the first time we're seeing Keith Hart here.
Yeah, he sold really good for the lariat. I think the second one that he hit on Keith Hart, he did really good at selling it. I thought Kendall looked really good here. He laid off the rest holds, and he was kind of working the whole match and finished it up with a nice-looking bulldog.
Kendall rocking the slick back hair now because he's a heel. Yeah, does the bulldog. Match goes almost 6 minutes. He's really trying, and I like that's what you noticed as well. He wasn't doing all the rest holds. Now he's getting in there. He's really working his butt off and trying to earn his keep. And he was really trying. And that's what I wrote right here. I wrote, dude is trying. It's literally on my notes.
Yeah.
I still think him and Dustin would have been a decent pair had they had time to come into their own as a tag team. But Kendall Windham, there was something to be said about him. He could have probably worked out here. He was never going to be in the semi-main event, definitely not the main event, but he could have done something here, certainly in a tag team. Not with Barry, but I think he could have done something here in a tag team anyway.
Yeah, I agree. They should have gave him somebody. Michael Hayes can get 20 partners, and Kendall Windham gets one. Come on, man.
Speaking of Michael Hayes, it's promo time, Magnum TA with Michael P.S. Hayes and the Junkyard Dog. They discuss Michael Hayes being scouted by Hiro Matsuda. Hayes says he's his own man. I have no idea what he said, but it was extremely derogative towards the Japanese because there is a long bleep. Not just the network version, but my original live version as well. I went back because I was so curious what he said that was so non-PC for the network that I had to go pull out my trusty old recording of it out of my box in storage. And I put it in there, and lo and behold, it was bleeped off the original Turner version as well. So the only thing I got out of that was the last word, JAP. I don't know what other words he said before that. I just know that's how the sentence ended. So that's Michael Hayes, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. I was like, I wonder if that was just a network thing or what, but that's crazy.
And if that was so bad, imagine what he said that was so bad that they did not bleep the Junkyard Dog as he slanted his eyes and stuck out his teeth, they have buck teeth, and said, Aso Toyota. So that's how pretty much how they closed the promo, the Junkyard Dog doing his own version of a 1950s Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Wow, this is bad.
And speaking of bad, we move on with Vincent Young back in the ring, the break dancer. Vincent Young, adopted son of Chief Jay Strongbow, gets a win here over Joe Kazana with that reverse sunset flip off the top rope. I don't know if you watched or paid attention, because I don't blame you if you haven't, but Vince Young, he's had a few matches now, and he keeps teasing like he's going to do the dive to the floor. The opponent always ends up on the floor in every match, and he always teases this big dive. And then he just jumps over the top rope, lands on the apron, and then jumps back from the apron back into the ring like he did something special, and then does like a little arm breakdance gimmick thing there. It's like it's some major feat to jump over the top rope to the apron. I've seen Michael Hayes do that. So I'm sorry, dude. I bet if you threw enough money at the Junkyard Dog, he'd at least try to climb over the top rope to the apron. So I don't understand why he thinks that's so cool.
I don't either. I mean, you got Dick Murdoch doing kip-ups at 300 pounds, 320 pounds. You jumping over the top rope to the apron's nothing, buddy. Macho Man does that every match. So it's like, and then you got Muda coming in, and he does the spot. So this whole thing is out the window. If he's building to something big, it's over by the end of this show.
Vince Young clearly not ready for this spot. Just one of a zillion George Scott crap decisions. Ross does his best not to crap on him. He says Vince Young has good moves. He's just looking at how to put them together. I don't really know what that means. I think that's Ross's, kind way of saying, he's young and he sucks still, folks. So just bear with him and you'll see how it shakes out.
Right.
It's like you said, that the best thing Vince Young ever did was as Mark Young in the WWF. He took an earthquake clothesline and did a backflip and ended up on Wrestling Challenge opening for a year or two. That's about all he can be remembered for.
Yeah, he's still getting booed out of the building as soon as he starts dancing. Every single time he starts dancing inside that studio, he gets booed out of the building.
But he gets a win here with the reverse sunset flip over Kazana. And I just wanted to point out, Joe Kazana was the grandson of promoter John Kazana, who promoted the Knoxville territory in the eastern Tennessee before he sold it to Ron Fuller there in the 1970s. So just a little bit of trivia there for those who might not have known that. And we close the Saturday night episode with the Midnights versus the Midnights from the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view. It's joined in progress, but damn near all of it's right there intact. Right here on TV, the Midnights versus the Midnights from Chi-Town Rumble just 5-6 days prior.
Yeah, I got it down here. 3 matches were given away 6 days after the pay-per-view. I'd be calling my cable provider and asking for a refund.
Yeah, I don't even know what you would do in that situation. It's insane that they're doing this. I just don't know. And that concludes the February action of the NWA. We're going to be moving into March. And so at the end of every month, you know what that means. It's time for the VIP Jobber of the Month.
VIP Jobber of the Month.
And Steve, this month's Jobber of the Month was a tough one. David Heath has really been busting his butt, and I know you were a big backer of him going into this month. Kip Montana, a.k.a. Billy Gunn, he's certainly an honorable mention. He's been doing some great jobs. He's looked really good. I didn't even realize how good he was as a job guy until going through these shows. I wanted to go with my new favorite Halloween costume, the Cruel Connection. Not because they look cool, but also because George South and Gary Royal are two of the best enhancement guys you're going to find. But I think after we deliberated and coming off of the Clash of the Champions and the Chi-Town Rumble, I think it's a unanimous decision. There can only be one guy in this slot, and it's got to be Jack Victory.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the guy, 3 or 4 different characters in a month, 2 matches on 2 different shows. He busted his butt and took those L's like a champ. He deserves that VIP Jobber of the Month for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he comes in, he works as the Clash of the Champions as not only the Russian Assassin, but he in a tag team match against the Midnights, but he ends up working as the Blackmailer under the hood again against Lex Luger. He turns around 5 days later, gets on the pay-per-view, gets on Chi-Town Rumble. He works again as a Russian Assassin, replaces his partner Angel of Death, who quit, left town. And then he ends up filling in for Dennis Condrey in the Midnights versus Midnights match and does a good job there as well. So, yes, he did lose every single match. I got to say kudos to you, Jack Victory. You did an amazing job in February of 1989. Ladies and gentlemen, your VIP Jobber of the Month for February 89, Jack Victory. Congratulations, Jack. You can pick up your trophy on the Wrestling Grenade Twitter account. That's at RASSLIN Grenade on Twitter. Jack, go pick up your trophy right now. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another segment we like to call the NWA Top 10. And before we play the track, I just want to remind everyone that the views expressed in the following parody of the NWA Top 10 are solely those of the Wrestling Memory Grenade and do not in any way represent the views of the Retro Network, the WrestleCopia brand, or any other third-party entity. And now, away we go with the NWA Top 10, February 89. Take it away, not Tony. Hello, wrestling fans. This is not Tony Schiavone. Now here's a look at this month's NWA Top 10 for the month of February 1989, as composed by promoters of the Wrestling Memory Grenade Board of Directors. In at number 10, 9, and 8, he's a jack of all trades. It's the Blackmailer. It's the Russian Assassin. It's Jack Victory. Moving up 1 notch this week to number 7, because he's still on the payroll, it's JYD, Junkyard Dog. Coming in at 6, it's the Caterpillar on Steve Casey's lip. He loves to play howdy doody on your coconut, Dan Spivey in at 5. Break dancing his way all the way to number 4 as a favorite of Strongbow, it's Vince Young. Number 3 this week, the human cardboard cutout himself, Hiro Matsuda, Have a Rice Day. Moving on to number 2 this week as he continues to make the climb. What kind of bird can't fly? A free bird. It's Steven Eckstat's favorite wrestler, Michael P.S. Hayes, in at 2. And coming in at number 1, shooting straight up the ranks, the man who killed the company in a matter of weeks, is Booger George Scott. And that's a look at the NWA February 89 Top 10. And another great top 10 put together by those of the Wrestling Memory Grenade, i.e. me. If you want to take credit or blame for that, Steve, you can as well. And we're going to move into March now, and it's the March 4th weekend, and we'll kick things off with the NWA Pro Show. The video footage I have is incomplete, about 30 minutes out of 45 minutes of action, so I don't know what we're missing here. Probably a lot of just localized promos. But David Crockett still there with Bob Caudle. It's how many freaking episodes of Pro do they tape in advance? For God, Jesus. I can't say anything I want to say.
Yeah, I don't know. He made it to March somehow. Man.
We kick things off. Sting over Keith Steinborn. There was a nice missile dropkick from Sting. Stinger Splash. Scorpion Deathlock ends it in 4:15. We go to a promo with Paulie Dangerously now with the SST. Paulie announces himself as the manager of the Samoan SWAT team, Samu and Fatu. And I have an audio clip of that promo.
They say Paulie Dangerously. We already know you're a psycho yuppie. Just how off can you be, huh? Just how dangerous do you want to live? Are you man enough to take a team? These 2 men. One that do board for a living. And another man that roamed the Isles of Samoa and hunted boars with his bare hands and ripped the flesh off their body and ate the meat because he was hungry. Are you man enough to do it, Paulie Dangerously? The fact of the matter is, when you talk about the Dangerous Alliance, when you talk about Paulie Dangerously now, you talk about you talk about Fatu. You talk about what's going to happen when the Fantastics get in our way. You talk about what's going to happen when the Road Warriors get in our way. You talk about what's going to happen when I get my call from the Midnight Express. When Dennis and Randy say, Paulie Dangerously, it's not time. Hey! Cornette and teach them all. I said, oh, no. It's not time to say, we lost. Oh, no. It's okay, boys. It's time, they say. They say, Paulie, Don't get mad, Paulie, no. Get even. I'm gonna get even, brother. I'm gonna get even. I'm gonna get even with you, Cornette. I'm gonna get even with you, Stan. You guys have missed your match. I feel sorry for you.
All right. And now we learn that Paulie's going to be the manager of the SST. And they kick things off right away in the ring with Paulie as their manager. A match here over Dale Laperouse and Nasty Ned Brady in 5 minutes. They finished things with Fatu's flying splash off the top rope. But what do you think about Samu, like, setting it up with a super back suplex off the top rope?
Oh, man, he killed the guy. I thought it was great. It looked awesome. I love the SST/head shrinkers. They looked brutal. They looked violent, but I'm pretty sure they were pretty safe. I loved them in the promo too. They just, like, Fatu was acting nuts, and Samu messing around with the telephone was tremendous. So
Yeah.
Paulie's words were great, but seeing those two and how they were interacting with him and what he was saying in their own little way was awesome. Just a great way to bring these guys in, and I'm enjoying it.
And we follow that great tag team matchup with another crap Michael Hayes tag team match. As Hayes now this week his wheel of partners continues. That's what I'm going to do. You guys go on Twitter after this show goes up. I'm gonna put together a Wheel of Fortune, and we're just gonna put the wheel up, and it's gonna just have a bunch of all of Michael Hayes' partners on there. It's just absolutely sick how many people, and every single one of them suck. I mean, I don't even want to say that about Ivan Koloff because I respect him. He was a tremendous worker, but in 1989 and their character and their gimmicks, and you have Dog who didn't want to work anymore. You have Steve Casey who was green as grass. Ivan Koloff here it doesn't make any sense. The only joy I got out of this match was watching Ivan Koloff have to trot to the ring to Bad Street USA. That was the only humor I got out of this match.
I don't know what they're trying to do. I mean, it makes no sense to me. We're about to get the payoff to all this, but there's no way they brought him in '89 to do this, to have 10 different partners just to do an angle at the end of March. So that doesn't make any sense.
Koloff might be the most random partner yet, and only in wrestling can you get an 80s rocker, freebird, rock band guy teaming with a Russian-turned American sympathizer. I don't even know what you would call it, Koloff's character at this point, but yeah, Ivan's on his way out. He's already done with all of his tapings by this point, and this very well could be the last time we see Ivan. I thought this team was just so weird, this Hayes and Koloff team. It contends with the random American teams from the war promotion in Japan throughout the 90s. They had some of the most weirdest tag teams over there. And I think this rivals the Earthquake and Stan Lane tag team of 1993. I think Stan Lane and Earthquake have this pair beat, but not so many other teams. It's just so odd, the pairing of Hayes and Koloff. It's just like they looked around and said, who hasn't worked this hour yet? Go out there and team with Hayes for this match. Because Hayes goes in there and does the work and hits the DDT to get the win.
Why can't they just do a singles match against Trent Knight? It probably would have been better.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. George Scott.
Road Warriors with a murder squash over Joe Cruz and El Negro. Cruz is a big dude, but you knew somebody was going to have to be mauled here, and it wasn't going to be El Negro because he's a big stocky dude. Don't get me wrong, they threw El Negro around the ring some, but they didn't attack him like they did Cruz. Poor Cruz was the patsy here. He took the brunt of the offense.
Yeah, somebody has to do the job.
Hawk did hit a nice power slam. But Animal pins Negro in about 2 minutes. I'm still confused about the name El Negro. It means the black. It translates to the black. The black what? Put something at the end of that moniker. Like it's driving me nuts. They're so lazy with the naming of their mask job guys.
Makes no sense to me. It's par for the course at this point.
Another weird, odd pairing. Eddie Gilbert teams with Vince Young this week over the Cruel Connection. Vince Young Strongbow rocking that teenage peach fuzz mustache here now, trying to get with the teeny boppers and digging that new kid's look. I know Eddie worked with all kinds of guys in his career, but I wonder what he thought of this kid's breakdancing crap. Young with the top rope sunset flip again. He gets the win in 4 minutes. At least Eddie Gilbert's letting Young get the pin, and whereas Michael Hayes was stealing the pin from Steve Casey in an earlier match on another show. So I think Gilbert just leaves the ring after the win. Like, I think Young goes over, gets the pin, starts doing the breakdance. I don't even see Eddie Gilbert in the ring anymore. I think he was just done, left the ring, and out of there.
Yeah, I don't think he stuck around for it. He was ready to get out of there. Probably not happy he's tagging with Vince Young.
And let's just say Young got over. And I know that's very hypothetical. Let's just say he got over. How many times was he going to do the same exact breakdance move before it got old and he had to learn something new? I mean, it's the same routine from this guy every week. He's not doing anything different in the ring. There's nothing new in his dance moves. It's just the same thing. It's paint by numbers every week, the same Vince Young match. Same finish.
Yeah.
Makes no sense. I don't understand. A reverse sunset flip off the top rope should be done, not set up as a finisher. It should be done organically when a wrestler's rushing into the corner after you. That's that type of offensive move, rather than I'm going to go climb up the ropes backwards and then jump over top of you and hope that you're in position to take a sunset flip. And it's just so ludicrous, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's not very good. I mean, it looks good, the sunset flip. He does really well with it. He doesn't like overshoot it like a Johnny B. Bad did. He usually catches him and goes over, and it looks clean. But as a finisher, I'm not buying it.
We're going to close the show with another fun one. It's another Dan Spivey promo. This time Dan's with Kevin Sullivan. Take a listen.
You know, when I created the Varsity Club, the first member I got was a number 1 draft choice, a 2-star athlete at the University of Syracuse, Mike Rotunda, a wrestler and a football player. My second choice was a first-round draft choice, a 4-time All-American in 2 sports from Oklahoma, Dr. Death Steve Williams. My third and final choice, a number 1 draft choice, right from the University of Georgia. The most dangerous man ever to come out of the University of Georgia. Went on to play for the New York Jets. Dangerous Danny Spivey. Next week, he'll appear here on TV. Tom Dangerous.
That's right, Kevin. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be a member of the Varsity Club. The Varsity Club is an elite club, and I'm glad to be a part of it because I'm a dangerous son of a gun. I like beating up people, and I like hurting them. And I can take pain, but I can dish it out a whole lot better. Pro Warriors, you guys like to hurt people. Well, that's good, because I like to hurt people too. You guys go around bragging about how you can control the NWA. The Varsity Club, my friends, are the ones in control here. And we're going to beat you up, and we're going to stomp on your head, and we're going to play a little howdy-doody on your coconut.
And more howdy doody on your coconut. I don't know what that means. I don't know where that came from. I Googled that expression. That does not exist. That is in Dan Spivey's world. That came straight out of Dan Spivey's mind. So I don't know, but it's hilarious to hear. And yeah.
It plays a little howdy doody on your coconut. Ho!
And that was from last time. You know, I noticed something about the last several weeks of Pro and Worldwide. And I know it's just an extra minute here, a couple extra minutes there. Even the roadies are now extended to 2-minute squashes instead of the usual 20-second squashes. But I just wanted to everyone to take notice here of how the syndicated squash matches seem to be going longer. Hashtag George Scott.
Yeah, I remember when we first started this and watching the shows in January, like the squashes were rapid fire, kind of like the WWF, where they didn't overstay their welcome. And now it's just like, it's a drag to get through these. These guys are doing arm bars and going slow, and it's like it's a syndicated show. Get to the action.
Yeah, the idea there, with the quick matches, especially on the syndicated 1-hour programs, was to get as much as you could in with as many talents as you could in, and he's trying to go back to the early, even just go back to the early 80s and the 5 or 6 extended squash matches on the syndicated programs like the Mid-Atlantic show and whatnot. So yeah, it's just everything's changing, and a lot of it's not changing for the good right here. We move on to NWA Worldwide for March 4th. Show kicks off with a Michael Hayes match. DDT gets the win over Jerry Price in 5 minutes. That's all I'm going to say about that. Another Sting
I have
promo.
one thing on that.
Oh boy, you have something to say about Michael Hayes? Go ahead, man.
It has nothing to do with Michael Hayes. It was Jim Ross during this match. I don't know if you picked up on it, but he said like Gordy and Roberts are taking a hiatus from the Freebirds right now. And I know those guys aren't anywhere in the company or anything like that, but I just thought it was interesting that Jim Ross would bring those guys up and basically kind of explain away why they haven't been around, because Hayes is synonymous with the Freebirds.
Right.
And that's kind of a breath of fresh air compared to the WWF when nothing else exists.
Yeah, once you're gone, you've never existed. It's not only that the other talent doesn't exist, the other promotion doesn't exist. It's guys that have created historical moments in your own company no longer exist because they're not there. And the only time you ever heard a throwback like that was typically on a Madison Square Garden show where it was a little more lackadaisical. Gorilla and maybe Jesse would be sitting there and they might mention, tough Tony Bourne, Matt Bourne's father, or Larry the Axe Hennig, the father of Kurt Hennig, just things like that. Yeah, I didn't catch that from Jim Ross, but that is cool to know that, that they acknowledge these things. I love when they do things like that.
Yeah, I like that as well. That's really all I had. Hayes was terrible.
Sting promo, lazy Sting, black UWF paint here, didn't even paint his face up worthwhile. He's using the old UWF paint where a little bit of nothing on his face. The only point Sting makes here that I can make out is that the NWA is real wrestling, which I guess would be saying that the WWF is not. Another SST squash with Paulie dangerously in their corner, this time over Rick Allen and Bob Emery. Another back superplex from Samu, just nasty. That should be the finish right there. And then Fatu comes off with a splash afterwards. Match only goes 3 minutes, but SST just looks so kick-ass here. I mean, they really wake you up when they get in the ring. I mean, they've really taken over squash matches on TV. Certainly one of the more entertaining squash matches right now going on in all of the NWA.
Yeah, I agree. I get excited every time they come on because I know they're going to beat the heck out of people and make it look rough and physical and dangerous a little bit, like that back suplex. And Samu even busts out like a DDT off the middle rope coming up in the later shows. These guys are doing things you don't see, and it just looks awesome.
We talked a little earlier about Hiro Matsuda scouting Michael Hayes. You made an excellent point in that maybe he should have scouted a few different talents so as not to foreshadowing what's to come. I had a question for you here. Do you think the NWA dropped the ball here on the SST manager scouting gimmick? They rushed it after 1 week, straight to Paulie being their manager. They could have prolonged this and made them into a main event caliber team like the WWF did with Bigelow and Savage. And do you think that just rushing it so fast, 1 week on Saturday, the Saturday night program, stating that all these managers are out there scouting the SST in their debut, and then here we are a week later, and Paulie dangerously is proclaiming himself their manager. And that was just, 5 days? It was just aired 5 days after the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view. Yeah, 5 days after the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view the last week's episode, where Paulie announces he's with the SST. Do you think they should have prolonged that and had a few different managers scout them and just sell it for a while, like these guys are so great, every single manager's looking at them and whatever? Or do you think that the SST needed a manager immediately and it was wise to just give him Paulie right out of the gate like that?
I think on paper, it worked for guys like Bigelow and Savage and Beefcake to a degree, like you stated. But with the SST, I think just their gimmick, they're not supposed to make sound decisions or, I want this guy or something like that. How would you do that? It's almost like sending a George Steele out there to say, hey, find you a manager. And that's not his gimmick. I mean, he's not going to talk. He doesn't do that. These guys should talk. If that's what they're going to do, if that's what the gimmick is going to be, is them just being island guys that are insane, like savages and cannibals. And I think Cornette calls them that soon. Then I don't know how they would come to that decision on picking the managers. So if you're going to go with Paulie, I don't know if it would have enhanced them if they had everybody going for him. But I don't know how they would make that decision.
Yeah, see, I kind of took it from the different perspective. I felt if they went out there for a few weeks and just did these quick 3-minute murder squashes like, the Road Warriors do, that they could have prolonged this a little bit and just got them a little more over with all these managers just salivating to have them in their grasp, have them in their under contract. And I think it would have meant more for both sides, SST and Paulie, when Paulie gets the coup, he gets the Samoan SWAT team, he gets the next team that's going to be the tag team champions and get revenge for him on Cornette and company and all these other things. And then, meanwhile, the SST are just murdering people, so they're just staying over just by murdering people. So I kind of thought that they rushed it a little bit. I'll put it this way. These last couple matches that they've had with Paulie in their corner, I don't think it aided them any to have Paulie in their corner. They were going out there and just killing guys, and I wasn't even paying attention to Paulie being out there. These guys, their squash matches are so entertaining and so just alive and vivid with action and mauling their opponents. That's all I'm even paying attention to. So I think they could have prolonged it a little bit longer from my take, and again, there's no right or wrong. It's not even preference. It's just curious, which side of the coin.
I'm with you on it could have definitely elevated them and Paulie at the same time, but I just don't know how they would get there by having them make a sound decision when they're basically cavemen. They don't have a brain the way they're presented.
Right.
I'm not saying they are, but the way they're presented on TV, that's their gimmick. So I don't know how. I can see it going south real quick. People bringing out bananas and stuff like that. I can just see somebody envisioning this in 1989 that'd be funny. And that's how they made their decisions. Interesting. I never really thought about it, but yeah, I could see both ways, and it'd be nice if they would have built them up a little bit more. Paulie ain't bad, though.
And we get Sting over Julio Barrera. They're going to actually have another match here later on, and I know you want to talk about that promo when we get to that rematch, but Sting here over Julio Barrera with Splash, and Scorpion ends it. Fun stuff with Sting flying around the ring. Dave Meltzer reports here that Sting had been offered a new 3-year Turner contract worth $280,000. Meltzer says he doesn't buy the number. He thinks it's a little high. I've heard Cornette do interviews. I don't remember the figure because Cornette kind of had a very good idea of what the number was, but I do believe it was somewhere around that, because I think Cornette, until they wanted to start paying them less, I think that's what Cornette and the Midnights were being paid, until Turner took over and wanted to change the contracts, and which leads to more issues here very shortly with Cornette and the boys. But yeah, Dave reports that, and basically it's confirmed that Sting, Luger, Flair, the Road Warriors, and Ellering were the only ones making more than Cornette and the Midnights. So those are the only 5 names that were making more than Midnight Express. So you have to figure their numbers were pretty far up there. And I just think it's so funny that Ellering was getting paid, Road Warrior pay just to stand out there. So it's just really intriguing.
I mean, good for him. Yeah. I mean, the Road Warriors are the Road Warriors. They could have had anybody there. But I think Ellering was great. I mean, he played the role perfectly. He had the look that fit them. He had the talk. He could talk. He was like the serious side. The Road Warriors, like, Hawk's nuts. He'll say something funny, and like you said, it kind of ruined his thing when like dead men don't make money,
right,
or whatever. Like it kind of ruined his promos.
Yeah.
But Ellering stands back there with his little newspaper, and he's so serious, and his voice resonates, and you just want to hear everything he has to say. So,
well, Ellering was like their real life manager too. He made sure they got to where they needed to go and all that stuff. So, I mean, I guess he earned his keep. Certainly, I'm not saying that he wasn't worth as much as the Road Warriors, but they were the show. So just to me, it just seems like maybe that's a little excessive. Cornette's making exactly as much as the Midnights, and that's another story for another day on here when we get to that. And okay. Jim Herd wants to change their contracts. He wants to give Cornette more than the Midnight Express, though, and it's just chaos and nonsense. And I can't wait when we do get into that stuff.
I was just curious because, I mean, to me, like, Ellering, I'm with you. He doesn't do anything for the Road Warriors as far as enhancing their presentation. Whereas, what are the Midnight Express without Jim Cornette? I mean, they're probably the Fantastic, to be honest with you. So without Cornette, the Midnight Express, I don't think are anything. I mean, it is what it is. If Road Warriors are making him that much money, then Ellering deserves to get paid because he's a part of the show.
This is more of a rhetorical question. Meltzer also reported at this point that the feeling in the Turner organization was the 2 most marketable men on the entire roster were Ric Flair and Sting. So let me ask you this. Why isn't George Scott doing anything with Sting when he's one of the 2 most marketable men and one of the top 5 highest paid guys in your company? Absolute idiot. Just absolute idiot. And if you guys haven't had enough of Dan Spivey, I've got one more Dan Spivey promo for you this week. Okay, well.
I haven't.
That's good, because I have one more Dan Spivey promo for everyone this week, and it's right here.
In case you people don't know who I am, I'm Dangerous Dan Spivey from the University of Georgia and played football with the New York Jets. But now I'm a professional wrestler. I'm here in the NWA, and I'm looking for the Road Warriors. Road Warriors, what are you guys going to do when you look into these eyes and you see no fear? What are you guys going to do when you see a guy that's on the edge like you guys? Who don't care about pain. I like getting hurt, but I like hurting people. And Road Warriors, you guys are in a whole lot of trouble because with me, Dr. Death, Mike Rotundo, and Kevin Sullivan, we're going to put you guys in a bad spot, and that's on your back. Looking up at the stars, jerking like 2 idiots. Road Warriors, you guys are in for a lot of trouble. And when you meet Dangerous Dan, it's going to be snack, crackle, and pop. That's your bones.
Snap, crackle, and pop at your bones. Mm-hmm.
Make sure to cut that off seconds earlier. He'd have been fine, but man,
yeah, he needed to fill those last 5 seconds of promo time, and it didn't do him any self-service there. But I love my favorite part of the promo is, other than the ending, is that he points out that I'm a professional wrestler now. Yeah, and you have been for over 5 years. Like this is some brand new thing going on in this world.
I think he's in his own little world, man. He really is, and it's great. I love it.
This is where we We get Danny Spivey in a match here. He's got Kevin Sullivan in his corner. Matt gets a win over Joe Cruz in 4 minutes with a frickin' bear hug. Spivey's knee had a really bad injury to his knee when he was in the WWF while he was still a babyface. He came back and did a little bit as actually a heel and started developing that heel persona in the WWF. Very hard to find those matches. I think maybe 1 or 2 aired on prime time. I know there's, a couple from house shows that were, televised. Other than that, you're not really going to find any of those matches. Yeah, it's just interesting. And I noticed that when Spivey walks around, he looks like he's a guy, even, as young as he is here, he's already falling apart. His body's already falling apart, which we'd see even, more later on as Waylon Mercy. And that's why he ended up having to retire. He just couldn't even get around the ring anymore. Spivey had some nice moves in this match, but they want to do this gimmick now where Sullivan wants all of the opponents punished, so they're starting to all do submission holds, and Spivey does this bear hug, and it looks awful. We'll see more of that as the shows go on. Fantastics are still here, at least for this show. Another promo. They actually mentioned the SST, so at least it's been recorded in the last few weeks. I hope we get it before they leave, but I'm pretty sure this is pretty much the end of the Fantastics on TV. I don't remember ever seeing that match anywhere, but the matchup, it has such huge potential. That would be feud-worthy. Like, I could see them going 2 or 3 big matches, like a Clash and a pay-per-view or something like that. And they get a match here, Fantastics over David Heath and Trent Knight in 2.5 minutes. Again, the Fantastics get one of the shortest matches on the shows. The cannonball on Heath ends it again. I don't understand why their matches are being so short. And it's reported at this point that the Fantastics have given notice to the NWA. They're going to finish working out their dates and they're on their way out. I don't think we're going to end up seeing a SST Fantastics match. It's unfortunate. I also thought there was some interesting hidden lines in a couple of Bobby Fulton's promos. He said they're here for as long as the fans support them. It seems kind of weird even for a babyface to say. Maybe Ricky Steamboat would say that, but I don't see anybody else saying that. So it was almost like they were hinting at a heel turn. But yeah, nothing comes of it because the Fantastics give notice here and they're on their way out. Other than all the clean finishes we've been getting, I'm starting to want Dusty back here as the new booker over George Scott.
You and me both, man. I mean, the clean finishes and finality of feuds and things like that seem to be good, but the way his philosophy in booking shows and running a company is just so outdated and terrible. I don't like it.
We move on to the nighttime show, the old 605 NWA World Championship Wrestling for March 4th. The network version is clearly not the original master copy. It's awful video quality, like 6th generation.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, hell, guys, give me a call. You can have my original copy. I'll go pull it out for you for the right price. I mean, just damn, what is this? Inexcusable. I know you can find a better quality version, but I won't dwell on that. We get Rick Steiner and Eddie Gilbert over Rip Morgan and Mike Thor. Missy, she's not a babyface. She does maybe on commentary or hosting a show like she did with JR sometimes. She works as that tweener or just someone on a hosting gig, but working as a babyface valet, it just doesn't work for me, especially Missy Hyatt. It just doesn't work for me. I don't like it at all. If anything, it hurts Rick Steiner and Eddie Gilbert. Maybe they're trying to bolster their faction even more by having Missy involved and giving the guys some eye candy to look at, but it doesn't work for me. And if anything, it takes away from both Rick Steiner and Eddie Gilbert, for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, she's easy on the eyes for sure. So I think they're maybe going with that, especially with what they saw with like what Elizabeth did over the last year with Macho, like in 88 to 89. I'm assuming they saw that and thought they could replicate that a little bit. Yeah, I don't know the history of Missy Hyatt like in the UWF or Mid-South. So if I have that history, I'd probably agree with you 100% that once you see something for so long or expect something for so long, you can't go back from that. And Missy probably fits in that category for sure.
And just listen to her on promo. Missy's a good heel promo, but as a babyface, she's just a deer in the headlights. She don't know what to say, and that's not even a knock on her. What do you say? You're just a valet standing there. When did Miss Elizabeth cut promos? I mean, what is she going to say that Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner can't say? She's not leading the team. She's just there as acting as a second. So Missy Hyatt as a heel, excellent. Missy Hyatt as a babyface, not so much. But anyways, Steiner and Gilbert here over Rip Morgan and Mike Thor. They go about almost 5.5 minutes. Hot shot on Thor ends the match. And poor Rip Morgan getting plugged into a job guy spot here. The first family of faces in general just isn't working for me. Eddie Gilbert is a face. It worked a little bit in January, but at this point, with the starting from scratch, Eddie Gilbert's one of those kind of guys that needs to be a heel unless he has a reason to be a face. There are guys that can play both sides. There are guys that can play either side. And then there are guys that have to be a heel first and then need a good reason to be a face to get over as a face. And Eddie's one of those guys for me. And here it's like they've started from scratch with Eddie, and it's just not working for me.
Yeah, it's not working for me either.
And it's disgusting to think we're a month removed from the hot angles and how over Eddie Gilbert was, and it feels like we're starting from scratch, and it's not even working to make matters worse. It's not even working. Missy's a face manager, like I said, just no. Rick Steiner he's still fun watching him wrestle in these squashes, but this is the real nail in the coffin for Steiner Watch 89. He's basically relegated to tag team matches now with Eddie Gilbert at this point, and it's the point of no return for Rick Steiner and the level he was at, how over he was at one point. How do you have two guys are so over on different levels, but both certainly over in January, and you lose all heat for both guys in a matter of a few weeks?
George Scott.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't get him over to start. It's not just him that does this, but a lot of bookers seem to do this. If they don't get him over, then they don't want any part of it. They want to be able to be the ones to say, I got him over, and this is what I did. Since he didn't do it, he doesn't care. These guys are treading water at this point.
Another Iron Sheik promo. He continues to call out the biggest names. The last time he called out Flair and Steamboat. This time he calls out Luger and Ric Flair. And can you imagine those matches? Oh, my God. Thank God none of those matches take place. Sheik starts wanting to pull out the old Persian Club challenge, and by this point, the clubs aren't even real. They're not 75 pounds each like they were in the 1970s, so they're just gimmicked clubs, and they really don't even have as much meaning anymore because all these guys with these amazing bodies, the Road Warriors, Luger, even if they can't do it, because it's not just about strength, it's also about getting that motion down to do the Persian clubs. But even if they couldn't do it, you could just look at them and imagine that they can do it based on how they look compared to Sheik. So the whole thing doesn't do him any favors anymore, and he's like rehashing, gimmicks from 10 years prior.
I always love the way it looks when he does the Persian clubs. It looks like it hurts like hell, and I wouldn't even want to try it. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, these dudes are jacked to the max. Steroids are running rampant. So doing Persian clubs ain't really doing much for people these days. But yeah, I think George Scott, he should have gotten fired just for bringing in this Sheik to wrestle. In his matches, he can barely move.
Yeah.
And you want to bring him in to be in a main event, to be a top heel? Like, what are you doing?
That clearly seemed to be the intent initially, but I think even George Scott, within a few weeks here, he even realizes where the Sheik's at on the card.
Yeah, thank God for that.
He's literally, if you go and look, people, in 1989, the Iron Sheik is 47 frickin' years old. The dude's pushing 50. I mean, think about that, because he got started late, in life as far as being a professional wrestler. Yeah, he's 47 years old here in 1989, and he's, getting a push like he's going to go work a main event. I know a few guys can do that nowadays, but that didn't happen so much back in those days. Certainly not in the main event spot.
Absolutely not.
But here we get a match with Iron Sheik over Cougar J. Match doesn't even go 2 minutes. He wins it with the camel clutch. Sheik actually beats on Cougar with a chair during the match and isn't even disqualified. Clearly, he isn't even capable of doing much physically. He's swinging chairs and whatnot just to get himself over. But Sheik I humble Cougar J with the camel clutch. I break his back. I can't tell you the rest here on this program.
Oh, man. Classic.
And Paulie shows up unexpectedly, so says Jim Ross, and announces he has purchased 3 minutes of TV time on the program every week for his own talk show, The Danger Zone. Here's that promo right now.
Fans joining us here, Paul E. Dangerously, and somebody's saying about some special segment. I had not been informed of a special segment here today.
Well, the fact of the matter is that I've been telling TBS, I've been telling the wrestling world that Paulie Dangerously is the greatest talk show host in the world today. They said Paulie Dangerously, take Letterman's show. They said Paulie Dangerously, take Bob Costas' show. They said take Cornette. They even told me to take Magnum. So that's exactly what I did. See, I purchased 3 minutes of this show. Ted Turner slick. I couldn't get the whole TBS, but I got 3 minutes of World Championship Wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see an interview segment every single week on this show, and it's going to be called, like it or not, The Danger Zone. And you're going to see it next. My segment, I own it, and you can't be on it.
That breaks my heart, no doubt about that. And fans, we'll see Mr. Dangerously in just a moment on The Danger Zone, right after we return.
And of course, the Danger Zone was the NWA's attempt at a talk show. Again, much like the WWF had the Brother Love show at the time. And of course, before that, Piper's Pit, the Snake Pit, the Body Shop, and all these other. Rogers Corner goes all the way back to Rogers Corner. But here we are with Danger Zone. You couldn't pick a better person to host a talk show here. Paulie Dangerously with his little cheap backdrop.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. They also stole something at the beginning of the show, too, where they ran through the car with the screen caps at the start, kind of like a Wrestling Challenger Superstar. So they're adding a bunch of stuff after the Chi-Town Rumble cosmetically that's kind of enhancing the shows a little bit. It gives them a different feel, and I've enjoyed that aspect. But yeah, the Danger Zone, great name, great everything. I like it. I can't wait to see these week after week.
And Paulie, his first guests are Ric Flair and Hiro Matsuda. But before they're brought out, we are introduced to Secret Service Jack Victory. That's Jack Victory in a presidential Secret Service-like outfit. He's pulling open the lapel on his jacket, speaking into it. He's holding a fake earpiece in his ear, trying to listen. And it's pretty cool. Tremendous look for Jack. And I like that they gave him something to do. This is a perfect fit for someone like a Jack Victory on the show.
I agree. He looks awesome. Like, he has his big his 1989 shades on. He looks believable. I mean, he's definitely not no Secret Service, obviously, but he plays it off really well. And I think it enhances Paulie a little bit that he has somebody like that to watch his back.
Now, I didn't record the entire Danger Zone episode because it does run 3 minutes, and that's a little long for a soundbite, but what I did do is record the first minute or so because there's a couple things that Paulie says in there that I'll touch on the other side of this soundbite. But it's basically the introduction of Ric Flair. And here's the first minute of the Danger Zone.
This, ladies and gentlemen, like it or not, is the Danger Zone. 3 minutes of airtime that I, Paulie Dangerously, manager of Fatu and Samu, the Samoan SWAT team, have purchased right here on TBS. By the way, this is my friend, Secret Service Jack Victory. Now, they said to me, Paulie Dangerously, since it's your first show, have anybody you want. Bring out a guy that loves everybody. Bring out Ted Turner himself, or bring out the greatest wrestler in the world today. Therefore, I ask you, the moronic public of the United States, to welcome my guest at this time, a man that I consider the heavyweight champion of the world, Nature Boy, Ric Flair!
All right, and the reason I really recorded that was obviously Paulie taking the shot at Bruce Pritchard there, saying, bring out a guy that loves everybody. You know, obviously a shot at the Brother Love show on the WWF at the same time.
Paulie's a mad scientist when it comes to those things, so he gets those subtle jabs out there. I liked it. I even liked how he presented Flair. He says he wants to have a son one day. He doesn't want him to grow up in a world where Ricky Steamboat is world champion, but somebody more like Ric Flair. I thought that was awesome. And I like the end, too. Yeah, he busted out the lighter.
Right. We get an interview here with Ric Flair, and he basically announces he's going to wrestle next week on TV to make a statement to Ricky Steamboat, and claims that Steamboat will be the shortest champion ever, which is hard to do because I'm pretty sure that Giant Baba, Tommy Rich, Kerry Von Erich, they've already been outlasted by Steamboat by this point, basically because Steamboat hasn't even been around. He's on a tour of Japan at the moment. And speaking of which, the Danger Zone's followed up by a pre-recorded promo from Ricky Steamboat, announces he's going to Japan. He claims that he and Ric Flair are gladiators, and he keeps referencing that family unit. And his promos are crap, man, and he's the world champion. I don't know, it's so hard so many world champions, and every one of them have been, maybe they weren't as exciting as Ric Flair on the microphone, but they were certainly deliberate. Harley Race, you believed what he said. Terry Funk, you never knew what he was going to say, but it was always entertaining. And here we have Ricky Steamboat cutting another promo, and this time as champion. But it is legit. Steamboat does go over to Japan for a little bit. I think him and the Road Warriors all wind up over in Japan for a tour here.
Yeah, it was a pretty brutal promo. He was stuttering all over his words. And finally, at the end, he said he would challenge Flair anytime, anywhere. So he's a fighting champion, but he just can't deliver that message in a way that's believable.
Next match is Mike Rotunda over Bob Emery. And as I mentioned, they're now having the Varsity Club do this gimmick where all of the guys involved are doing submission holds for finishes. Rotunda wins here with what they're calling is the guillotine. It looks something like a half abdominal stretch on the mat with a half Nelson hooked in. It's a fun story here for what it's worth. Ross and Magnum selling that Emery has earned this title match after winning some matches on the house shows. We have all Varsity Club members at ringside. Rotunda takes some powders, but he's never really in trouble in this match, but he wins with that guillotine. I like the story on commentary. I don't know if you really honed in or paid attention to the story him and Magnum and Ross were telling, but they really tried to make this feel like something more than just another squash, even if it was just another squash with a few bells and whistles attached. Ross commented during the match, the Varsity Club's colleges. It says Spivey's from the University of Georgia, Rotunda's from Syracuse, Doc is from Oklahoma, and he says Sullivan's from the University of Mars.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
Which pretty much explains, Sullivan's gimmick at this point. But I don't want to take away from the point I was trying to make prior to that, but I saw the note and I wanted to get that in. But what did you think? Did you notice the commentary during this match trying to build this up as more than just the regular squash match with Bob Emery here against Rotunda?
Yeah, they were definitely doing their best to make it look like Emery was a legit challenger, because on TV, all you see him doing is jobs. So they're kind of referencing house shows, and that kind of leads to the whole anything can happen at shows. So all in all, just great job by Ross and Magnum. I think they work really well together, and they're really starting to gel, playing off each other.
Yeah, and I don't remember ever liking Magnum TA on commentary, but I've really started to, I don't know, it's an acquired taste, I guess, but it's starting to rub off on me at this point.
Yeah, I agree, and I think they're really starting to get to the point where they can tell stories and work well off of each other, and this is one of their better jobs right here.
Following the Rotunda squash match, we get a Varsity Club promo, and there's so much going on in this promo if you're paying attention. First, Kevin Sullivan claims they found out in the NWA rule book that the TV title can only be on the line in the first 10 minutes of a match. So if that's the case, shouldn't Rick Steiner get the belt back then?
He should, yeah.
Dan Spivey chimes in that just out of the blue, he tells Mike Rotunda, hey, you should put up 10 grand, and throw, just randomly out of nowhere. Hey, you put up 10 grand every time you wrestle. You're such a great wrestler. And Rotunda kind of has hesitations at first, and he looks at Sullivan. Sullivan gives him a nod, and Rotunda agrees. Yeah, sure. I'll just start putting up 10 grand every week. It was just so out of the blue, out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was all over the place. Spivey just being Spivey, and like you said, there's a lot going on here, but it wasn't bad. I kind of liked it.
And that wasn't even the coup de grace of this entire promo, because this is the promo where Kevin Sullivan deems Rotunda captain of the Varsity Club. Captain Mike Rotunda is born right here in this promo. And what was up with Dr. Death in this promo? Were you watching him? He kept cutting into the promo, cutting people off. It looked like it was pissing Sullivan off legit. He was saying how hot he was. They needed air conditioning in the studio. He was doing wrestling drills on the floor at one point. Sullivan looked like he was legitimately getting a little annoyed near the end of his, trying to get his stuff in with Doc keeps cutting him off for this comedy, basically, is what it was.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing, but yeah, Sullivan didn't look too happy. I even put down here, like, he just starts rolling over the floor doing his wrestling drills. Like, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah, it was really weird. Really weird to see Doc doing that.
Yeah.
Not really sure what he was going for there. I think he just went into business for himself. He was having fun for himself.
Was he in that car ride with Sullivan and Rick Steiner?
He might have been in a car ride with someone, and they might have been experimenting with something. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well.
Midnight Express over Joe Kazana and Julio Barrera. Of course, when I say Midnight Express now, I'm referring to Jim Cornette's. Paulies are gone. This is a pretty sloppy match. Lots of bad positioning and mistimed spots and bumps by Barrera and Kazana. Rocket launcher ends it on Kazana in 6:45. Those Midnight Express, they really know how to stretch out those squash matches, but this was one of my least favorite Midnight Express squash matches I've ever seen.
Yeah, it wasn't very good. I put boring. It was pretty boring.
We follow that up with a Lex Luger promo, and boy, does he look like a different man. I mean, we're talking less than 2 weeks from the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view. It's amazing how fast Luger's body frame just completely changed. He added tons of mass to his body. I think it was time for a cycle.
Yeah, definitely. I guess so. With a guy that works out as much as he does, I'm assuming a cycle, you probably are going to blow up pretty fast as far as size goes when you work out as much as he did.
Yeah, I encourage anybody, go in there and watch any of the World Championship Wrestling shows, or watch The Clash, or watch Chi-Town Rumble, and take a look at Luger's body and look what he looked like then. And then fast forward 2 weeks later here, what is this, March 4th? And look at this Luger promo here on the World Championship Wrestling episode. Looks like a completely different human in the body. I mean, his frame is just exploding. I mean, he's put on so much mass. It's insane how fast that he did that. Just changed overnight. So needless to say, I think we're going to see a more slow style to Luger moving forward. Probably no more top rope body blocks from Luger.
Shame.
SST over Bobby Mercedes and Joe Cruz. Samu with the DDT off the middle rope on Mercedes. I love that move. What'd you think of that?
Oh, I loved it too. I thought I watched it and I was like, "What the heck did he just do?" And then I rewound it. I saw him do the DDT. I'm like, "Oh man, that could be dangerous if not done correctly."
Oh yeah.
For sure.
For those who haven't seen it, he stands the opponent up in the corner. The opponent's standing in the corner. They're not on a rope. They're just standing there vertical upright on the mat. And Samu climbs to the middle rope like he's mounting him for punches or a monkey flip, and then hooks him in a DDT and falls backwards into a DDT. I got to give it to both Samu and Fatu. They were very creative and innovative in some of the moves they came up with as during the Head Shrinkers era and the SST era. But man, they looked dangerous, and I'm sure for very good reason.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it, but yeah, it's pretty dangerous for sure. SST ahead of the game, innovative as heck, like you said. Just great to watch.
Also wanted to note on commentary during this match, Paulie jumps on commentary real quick. He says hi to Dennis Condrey, who he says is now retired in Colorado. Then he says hi to Randy Rose, who's standing somewhere in an unemployment line. So clearly that's leading to something, you would think.
Yeah, he even mentioned like Bush and Quayle being in office, so freeloaders will be taken care of now and stuff like that. So yeah, just a really good promo by Paulie during the match.
Interview with Barry Windham. He's flanked by Kendall Windham and Hiro Matsuda. Barry says Luger's win was a fluke, and he discusses his hand injury. He plays down his hand injury, and basically sounds like he's coming back for the U.S. title. Then we get Windham in action. Gets a win over George South in 4.5 minutes with a rough-looking lariat. It was not very good. Barry sells the hand. He's starting to get that Widowmaker look, that beard and the slick back ponytail hair and the thicker body. So Barry's starting to transform himself as well. And we know he's going away soon. He's going to have to go get surgery on that hand, but he's still working right here with the injury. It seems like a great time to go take care of that would be directly after the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view. You lose the belt. It's time to go get that done and pop back up on TV. But no, Barry actually works here several more weeks before he goes and gets the injury taken care of.
One thing I have down on this one was like how he's continuing to work the hand and he's selling it. Obviously, it's a legit injury and he's fighting through it, but it's a shame in today's world that these guys got to be superheroes and they can't sell injuries week to week. I think that's one of the big things that's missing in like today's wrestling. It needs to be something that's brought back. You got guys going through all this crazy stuff just to look perfectly fine the next week. Just a lost art.
And it's unfortunate, like everything that's going on with Barry right now and what we know ends up happening with Barry Windham here soon, because it seems like he's just about ready, like for a prime top run spot, like a main event spot. He's got this look now, this main event look, as far as I'm concerned. He's starting to, his promos have really improved just in the last couple of months. Ever since Starrcade, his promos have really gotten a lot better than they ever were for the last 9 years he's been in the business. I've actually enjoyed some of his promos here in 1989. So he's improved by leaps and bounds. Obviously, he doesn't need to improve on the wrestling level. Just one of the greatest talents of all time. So it's unfortunate that this hand injury is hindering him right when he's getting ready to really break out and make that main event run.
It stinks. Just one of those guys that got derailed by injuries.
We get a match with Sting over the Masked Raider and 315. Splash and Scorpion ends it. JR speculates that the Raiders from Oakland. Haha, JR. I think even at this point, the Raiders had actually moved to Los Angeles as far as that goes. But Sting looks so good here. He hits some really nice looking drop kicks. His leaping height is just insane. Like, people don't realize how high he could go back before his knee injury in 1990.
So he had fun in this one.
Yeah.
Crisscross sorts of stuff. He was just having a good time. I mean,
yeah, lots of comedy here. I think he grabbed the Raider by his nose at one point.
Yeah, he was goofing off in his own words.
Yeah. But, the first 20 seconds of this match were more entertaining than the entire 20 minutes match he had with Butch Reed on the pay-per-view. Up next, we got Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express back in the studio, and this time we get a promo. It's our first Jim Cornette promo ever since Chi-Town Rumble here. So Jim Cornette on the mic. The original Midnights are gone. Paulie's still left. Cornette says Paulie's still left, and they're settling things with Paulie, and they'll have to go through the SST to do so. Then they'll do it. I like it here. Cornette says that they said rock and roll would never die, but they put them in a coma. They ran off the original Midnight Express, and the SST would be next on the list.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that aspect of the promo. There was a lot of racist jokes and things like that during the promo, but the ending was great, I thought.
We get the badass team of Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Dan Spivey taking on Crash Chandler and Steve Casey. And if there was ever a jobber with the apt name of Crash, it would be in the ring against the likes of Dr. Death and Dan Spivey. Unfortunately, Spivey still using the bear hug here, and he uses it multiple times in the match. If that's your finisher, shouldn't it put the job guy away? Spivey uses this 2 or 3 times in this match and eventually just releases it and then does it again. Makes no sense to me. I don't know whose idea this was or why they were doing it.
I don't know either. Probably George Scott, taking it back to the 70s.
I wish they would have picked a better finisher. That's for certain.
Yeah, for sure.
Steve Casey gets a mild hot tag at one point in this match, and he tries to do arm drags, and it's hilarious because Dr. Death is not having it. He is not cooperating. Casey drops down and starts to spin over with the arm drag, and Doc's just standing there holding his arm in place and just standing there, not refusing to go over, and eventually yanks his arm out, and Casey tries it again, and Doc does it again, and it was really hilarious to watch as he just like shoots on Casey by not taking any moves. Crash is just awful. I don't know who booked Crash Chandler or whoever that is. He was awful. Bad selling. Took delayed bumps. Bumped like after he was hit. Delayed selling of moves. Doc with some snap Germans there at the end to make sure Crash couldn't screw him up. And, that was the whole match. It was just a bunch of bad stuff. Just bad stuff from the Varsity Club's opponents here. Move on to another Sting interview. I know those are some of your favorites this week. There's still no direction here for Sting. He's still talking about his hopes for 1989. We're now in February. He has hopes. He won't tell us what they are. I don't think that Sting knows what they are. I mean, at least give the guy a freaking program with someone. I don't even care who it is. Just give him something to do week to week. I don't care if it's a 2-week program with somebody underneath. Sting wants to challenge people, but he acknowledges absolutely no names. At least in the generic tag team promos, they start naming all the tag teams off of the guys they want to take on. Sting doesn't even have a name ready to throw into this promo here of who he's looking forward to wrestle. It's just terrible.
Yeah, he's like, I'm ready to fight, but nobody wants to say my name out here. So he doesn't even know who wants to mess with him. Yeah, just no direction for a guy that's clearly hot as hell with the crowd and over, and you can't come up with anything for him.
And if you guys like the name Crash Chandler, then get a load of this one. Butch Reed with a win over Gator Gilmore in 3 minutes with a flying shoulder block. I love Reed still doing that kneeling pin with the double bicep pose. I don't know who named these jobbers. Crash Chandler, Gator Gilmore. Much like Sting's match, Reed does more in the first 20 seconds of this match than he does in the entire 20-minute match with Sting. It's just really ridiculous to think back of how much time was wasted when that match was on the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view and how those talents were wasted.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, give them 12 minutes and they probably would have worked harder because they knew they didn't have to drag it out 20 minutes.
Tag team action with the Junkyard Dog, or as Dave Meltzer liked to refer to him, the Junk Food Dog. Teaming with Michael Hayes over Trent Knight and Gary Royal in 4.5 minutes. Hayes again with the DDT, this time over Knight. It was a nice little tag team setup there. At least JYD got involved. Knight went into the ropes and JYD punched him in the gut to make Knight bend over for the DDT. So at least Dog got involved,
Right. Yeah.
And here again, we had Hiro Matsuda once again out there scouting Michael Hayes. This was bad, as expected. Hayes not giving Trent Knight any offense during the match. He was doing the Road Warrior sell again. He wasn't even letting the job guys do anything to him. He's no selling any offense. Hayes tries to attempt to make it look like he's wrestling Knight on the mat. It's awful. I don't know if you wrote this down in your notes. I don't know if you even caught it, but there's a point in this match where Hayes gets Trent Knight on the ground and Hayes has absolutely no idea how to mat wrestle him. So he just starts kind of rolling around with him, like to make it kind of look like there's wrestling, and it's comical. It's ridiculous.
I'm not surprised at all.
And they follow the match with an interview with Michael Hayes and the Dog once again, and they're still selling that tour of Louisiana coming up. No mention of the Clash. These guys main evented the territory 9 years earlier. Dog was the Hulk Hogan of the territory. There's that's known worldwide. But it's funny how much changes in just a few years because Dog ain't selling the ticket now here in 1989 to anything in Louisiana.
Yeah, he's got the stink on him from the WWF. There's no way he's selling tickets.
He's got the stink on him from everything he's done here in the last couple of months, as far as I'm concerned.
That too.
He's done himself no favors. You can't even blame Vince for this one.
No, absolutely not.
And at this point, we conclude the show. It feels to me like 90% of the roster is just wandering around aimlessly, cutting generic promos, winning squash matches, and having zero direction. There's just no excuse with people like Sting And I don't know who dropped the ball on the Fantastics, and hashtag George Scott sucks. And then I put this down at the end of the show because they used some 6th generation tape that they stole from somebody somewhere. They actually took the closing credits from a previous episode and slapped it on the bottom, but they're so lazy, they used one from 1988. So we get a copyright 1988 logo at the end of this March 1989 episode. So great job, everyone involved. And then we close the weekend with the NWA main event from March 5th. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah. Jim Ross and Paul Heyman on the show. We got Dick Murdoch over Gary Royal from February 20th Omni. 6.5 minutes with elbow drop. Dick Murdoch picks up basically an extended squash here from the Omni. Barry Windham and Kendall Windham over Eddie Sweat and Eddie Gilbert and Steve Casey. Sorry about that. Also from the Omni, February 12th. That match goes about 8:15. So the Windhams are still being used here as a tag team, at least it's some of the time. And, hey, we get another look at the main event of the Chi-Town Rumble here as Steve Casey and Kendall Windham are here, one-on-one. You think, because a lot of people think Flair and Steamboat was the main event of Chi-Town Rumble, but if you go back and listen to our watch-along from last week, you'll realize that, no, Steve Casey and Kendall Windham closed that show. And here they are right here on the main event. This had to be ratings.
Yeah, they're selling the tickets, man.
At least Eddie Gilbert's getting thrown a bone. He's working both Windhams. He has a grudge against both Windhams. Barry, of course, assisted in breaking Gilbert's nose, which seems to already be fine. And Kendall Windham, of course, turned on Eddie during a tag team match. So Eddie was looking for some revenge here. He didn't get it.
Absolutely not.
You know, obviously they get the heat on Eddie Gilbert during the match. Barry with the DDT. Kendall with the awesome-looking left-handed lariat. I didn't really notice that in the first couple shows after he had turned. But after you kept pointing that out on the prior episode that we did, I picked up on that lariat, man. Kendall had a nice-looking lariat.
Yeah, he did. He should have used that as his finish. It looked really good. To be honest, it's better than Barry's. I don't know if it's the guys that Barry's doing it against or Barry's just a little bit taller that makes it a little awkward, but Kendall seems to be the right size and the right height and lay that lariat in, and he does it very well.
Sometimes you just got it, man, and he's got it with that move. But the finish sees Kendall and Eddie Gilbert collide. They crack heads or whatever. They both go down. Eddie makes the hot tag to Steve Casey. Kendall stays in because, Barry wants his brother to get the pin. So Casey Casey looked good in the finish. I'll give him that. Mostly looked good. Honestly, this was the best Steve Casey match yet, I thought. Throughout the entire match, I wrote this in my notes, I thought Kendall versus Casey was actually pretty damn good throughout the entire match whenever they were in the ring together. They were very fast-paced and no rest holds. It was pretty decent. There was no miscommunication or no screwing up. It was actually a pretty decent match.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought by the end of these episodes, I felt like Steve Casey was getting better. One thing I do want to point out during this match, Jim Ross did make the comment that Tommy Edwards is responsible for all the camera cuts to women on these shows.
Okay.
So
Tommy Edwards.
We know who pervert. Thank you for all the camera shots and the cutaways.
Yeah.
Anyway, I decided to let that know. And they also pushing that Gilbert and Missy adopted Rick Steiner. Like, what in the hell?
I caught that too. Not a fan of that at all. Yeah.
I don't even know how old he was. But he gets adopted. Like,
yeah.
What are you going to do with an adult? He's an adult.
Well, Eddie Gilbert's 27 here. So, yeah, and Missy's got to be younger than that, I would think, or close to, or same age.
Yeah, those are the notes I had for that one. But, yeah, they totally dropped the ball on Eddie and Rick Steiner. I know Rick Steiner's not in this match, but Steve Casey did look pretty good here.
And I said Kendall got the pin here, but I was lying. It was actually Casey misses a dropkick on Kendall. Kendall tags in Barry, and Barry actually finishes the match with a superplex on Casey in 11 minutes. So not a bad little match. And after watching Kendall and Casey here, I kind of wish they had gotten the time on the pay-per-view instead of Hayes and the Russian Assassin.
Yeah, same here. It kind of looks like, though, Eddie was just out of it. I don't think he was interested. At the end, Kendall kind of just touched him on his boot. He jumped down to distract him, so he didn't make a run in to try to save the pin on Casey. He just kind of looked lackadaisical, didn't care, and he kind of just left the ringside after it was over. But I feel bad for him. I think I'd be the same in that situation.
Up next is another Paulie Dangerously promo. This time, Paulie has some comments for Randy Rose, and I recorded them, and here they are right now.
I've talked about your attire, and I'm really impressed.
Well, thank you.
I want to say that I'm hopefully that I'm in some small way having a positive influence on the way you're dressing.
Oh, you
this has got to be a very expensive jacket.
Brooks Brothers.
a silk tie. They don't give these away.
No.
Matching scarf. I'm sure that's silk imported.
Huh?
And you're buying time on the major television stations. Yes. You're spending money right and left. But you're not spending any money with Randy Rose. You're not spending any money with his kid that may be missing his lunch money at school. And obviously you're not losing any sleep over it either. It's got to concern you a little bit. Come on.
You know, you're just like all these sports fans out there. You're so hypocritical. You know, I spent a little time in Dallas, Texas, and I was there right before they fired Tom Landry. And all the time before they fired him, people said, oh, get rid of Landry. He's an old man. He needs the hat no more. Come on. Then they fire the guy, and it's like, oh, poor Tom Landry. We miss him so much. The guy's on the unemployment line. And you say the same thing about Randy Rose. When Randy Rose was here, it was, boom, pow, hope your kid rots. Now all of a sudden it's poor Randy Rose. He's on the unemployment line. Hey, I gave the guy a break. I gave him some extra money. I gave Jim Ross $100 yesterday to give to Randy Rose. What more do you want from me?
No, you didn't. You're lying.
I heard that Randy Rose and Tom Landry are right next to each other on the unemployment line. They're going to open up their own football stadium.
Well, and what are they going to name it? Rose Stadium?
Unemployment Incorporated.
Oh, hilarious. Well, fans, somebody's got to have some compassion here.
And just another Paulie Dangerously promo, and he almost kind of makes a good point. You know, it's one of those heels. Like Orndorff was always good at being a heel, but making actual points. You know, like why he turned on Hogan. Some of Orndorff's rationalizations made sense. And Paulie here, you know, he says, "Oh, now everybody likes Randy Rose. You didn't care when when you wanted him to lose, but now that he lost, everybody's worried about his pension." And right. I don't know that very many people actually were worried about Randy Rose's pension, but yeah, I like that promo, and I wanted to include it in there.
I did too, because it's funny. Unemployment Inc. I legit laughed at that one. Good stuff by Paulie there.
And we go to the main event of the main event, and I can't believe this. They literally show the last 10 minutes of the 23-minute Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat world title match from Chi-Town Rumble. And it includes the finish. What in the blue F?
Are they trying to get ratings? I don't know what they're doing. I mean, are they that desperate for ratings to give away pay-per-views?
I don't think it's ratings at all, because you have George Scott. If it was about ratings, he'd be selling the hell out of Clash of the Champions by this point, wouldn't he? I don't think he knows what ratings are. I think he comes from a world that ratings didn't even matter. I don't get it. And if it was about ratings, wouldn't you advertise this in advance that you're going to show this? You can't get ratings, just expect people to flip around and accidentally find this on, at the end of the program. So I don't get it. And I wouldn't even be against showing the first 10 minutes of the match, or the first however many minutes when it was getting really hot and maybe Flair takes a bump to the floor and you're like, oh, you missed the action, make sure you don't miss it next time. Instead, they cut into the prime middle of the match and just show the rest of the match in its entirety. It's ridiculous. I don't know what the hell's going on.
I don't either. I have no idea. It makes absolutely no sense. And you wonder why they suffered the way they did. They don't have anybody there that's smart enough to know what the heck to do. They didn't have anybody that was that total package that could do everything. No pun intended there, but they didn't have anybody that was smart enough to be able to book a company to where it made sense. And they didn't have anybody on the business side that said, okay, this isn't smart.
And we move on to our next week here, and that's the March 11th week with NWA Pro. And oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to mention this last week. That last episode of Pro on March 4th was David Crockett's last episode of television, and they did it in front of a green screen, he and Caudle. And it's already up on Twitter if you guys want to go to our Twitter account at Wrestling Grenade and check it out. David Crockett has turned sideways like a profile and staring down Bob Caudle with this death stare through the entire opening of the show while Caudle talks. He doesn't move. He doesn't blink. He just stares Caudle down like he's about to murder him throughout the entire opening of last week's episode. And I took a couple screen caps of that, and I had to put that up online. So go on Twitter and check it out. It's insane. Like, David Crockett's just pissed off. This is his last day. And it's clearly it was taped after an arena show because there's a green screen opening. So Crockett knew. He already knew by that point. He was in a studio somewhere filming his last show. So, yeah, it's hilarious just watching him stare down Bob Caudle with this death stare.
If looks could kill.
Yes. But we move on to March 11th weekend, and that's the NWA Pro again. And now with Crockett gone, he's replaced by Kevin Sullivan. Sullivan in there with Bob Caudle, and that was one of Herd's favorite things to do, take wrestlers and make them announcers. He did it with Sullivan. He did it with Funk. He did it with so many guys. Dutch Mantell. There's quite a few guys you'll see they tried to transition into announcers, whether they wanted to or not. Show kicks off with Midnight Express over the Russian Assassins 2. So, this is clearly taped after Angel of Death is left. So Jack Victory's still working the gimmick, at least for this match. So the Midnight Express over Russian Assassin 2 and Mike Thor. So Victory does one more job here. Another chance at the Midnights versus New Original Midnights with Mike Thor joining Victory. That would be nice. What do you think about that? Do you think Paulie would come out and maybe take on Jack Victory and Mike Thor as the new Original Midnight Express here?
Absolutely not, man. He has one of the better tag teams already in his stable. So absolutely not.
Anyways, double flapjack on Mike Thor ends this. 6 minutes. Midnights go over. And then we are introduced to the NWA hotline. And this is the very first time that I saw the very famous number, 1-900-909-9900. And here's a commercial.
It's new. It's here. It's the Wrestling Hotline. Now, you can keep up with the latest breaking action in the NWA by calling 1-900-909-9900. On the Wrestling Hotline, you can hear all your favorite wrestlers, like Luger, Sting, Ric Flair, and more. Plus, Jim Cornette's Insult of the Week.
It's here, Wrestling Hotline. Just dial 1-900-909-9900.
And then it cuts off like 3 seconds before the commercial's supposed to end because that's just how the NWA worked.
Classic. Sounds awesome.
Barry Windham squash. He's still being flanked by Hiro Matsuda and Kendall Windham at ringside. Windham with the superplex over Bob Emery in 4 minutes. Then another debut, Joe Pedicino. Joe Pedicino knows the NWA's version of the Event Center. Of course, Pedicino, known as the Round Mound of Sound, for obvious reasons. If you haven't seen Joe Pedicino, he's a rather large individual, and he's sitting at a desk. Basically, the NWA's version of the Event Center, best way I can describe it.
Yeah, I like the idea of bringing it in. It's all about execution, though.
I think Pedicino was okay in doses, and I think he was okay in this particular spot on the show. I don't know that I would have cared for Joe Pedicino as a commentator, but I think he fit well in a position like this. Of course, for anybody that doesn't know, Pedicino had hosted a TV block on an Atlanta station for many, many years. I don't remember how many hours of wrestling footage it was on the weekend, but it was an insane amount of hours of all the different promotions. And Pedicino would host the show in between each show, and of course, he would go on to marry Bonnie Blackstone, believe it or not, and she was also on the show with him. She played his sidekick. They kind of did a Gorilla and Bobby thing where he would tease her and whatnot. Pedicino also had the Pro Wrestling This Week show, which he worked with Gordon Soley on and Bill Apter. Pedicino here gets his first real gig working for the NWA. We get a promo here from Sting and Lex Luger. I really don't have much to say about that.
Yeah, he just calls it wrestling. I know that fits our Twitter handle, but Sting calls it. Other than that, yeah, there was nothing to him.
Michael Hayes over Bob Cook in 5 minutes with a DDT. Hayes matches have no business going 5 minutes. That's all I got there. Another Dr. Death. You're really finding these. You're really finding things in these Michael Hayes matches now. I think you're starting to dig them, man.
I'm not digging him. I'm just not paying attention to his crappy wrestling. I'm just listening to the commentary. Bob Caudle calls Hayes Mr. Excitement, and Sullivan says, if that's excitement, then I'm going to go get a barf bag. You and me both, Sullivan. I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I remember that comment, yeah. Another tag team squash here. Dr. Death and Dan Spivey again teaming up, this time over Joe Cruz and Tony Suber. It's just an awesome visual seeing Doc and Spivey on the same team. Spivey gets the win here with the Boss Man Slam and 440 on Cruz. Promo with Ric Flair. Bob Caudle conducts the interview with Flair this time. Flair is the 5-time champion. The people in the NWA still can't seem to spell Rick. It's spelled R-I-C-K at the bottom of the screen for this promo here in 1989. 5-time world champion, and you still don't know how to spell his name right. Amazing. Flair talks a rematch, and he seems less angry here than before he was pinned, to me, before he lost the championship. He's more calm here. He's more confident. Steamboat can't do it again. Flair name drops Luger is above him now because Luger had won the U.S. title. It's funny how the pecking order changes, and Flair points out he's chasing them now. But he says it so calmly and so cool, whereas when he was champion, he was going crazy and insane and losing his cool every time he turned around. So it's an interesting change. As the champion, he was hostile. And now that he's chasing, he's confident. And I think that's smart characteristics based on what side of the title match you're on. He can't sound too desperate as a challenger, so I thought he did a really good job here being calm and just composed and basically saying that Steamboat can't do it again, so I know I'm regaining my belt for the 6th time.
Yeah, Ric Flair's the best when it comes to that. There's really not much you can say to give credit to Ric Flair that hasn't already been said. You don't really see this side of him because a lot of people grew up in the 90s Flair, but this late 80s run where he was, challenger, especially against Steamboat, is something you didn't see very often. And his promos are just as good, if not better, at this point, chasing than he is as the champion. Just great job. Those little things that he plucks and does and changes to make it fit whatever he's doing. He's just the best when it comes to that.
So Flair keeps cutting these promos about a rematch with Steamboat. We've even seen Steamboat reference a rematch. We keep getting all these promos, and they keep mentioning a rematch. But they're not allowed to frickin' say when or where it is. They can't say, hey, April 2nd, Clash of the Champions. They keep referencing this rematch on TV. People have to be wondering, what are they even talking about? I guess the house shows. But, it's just amazing that they keep setting up this big match, and we're not getting any reference that it's even going to take place on TV.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Talk about going to the Mid-South, Louisiana, a big rematch, all this stuff, and people have no idea it's going to be on TV. What are you doing?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's insane to think that the Clash is right around the corner and there's just no mention. It doesn't even exist. I don't even know if the name has been mentioned yet on TV. Moving on, we got Mike Rotunda over Bobby Mercedes, 3.5 minutes. Rotunda, TV champion, gets a win this time with the butterfly suplex. Lex Luger over Julio Barrera. In this match, Luger hit one of his better-looking power slams, and I was really shocked it was on a guy the size of Barrera. I'm not really a fan of a lot of Luger's power slams. They looked very sloppy, especially in his WWF run, but he had a nice one here, and obviously Luger wasn't up for racking someone the size of Barrera, so he actually gets the win here with a full Nelson, which was kind of unique and different for Lex Luger. Picks up the win with the full Nelson in 2:45.
Typical Lex Luger squash here. It is pretty solid.
We get some more Joe Pedicino knows. This time there's a Ric Flair promo. We get an Iron Sheik promo with some anti-American nonsense. It's nice to see all the big names back this week in syndication. It's our first look again in syndication at Luger, the Varsity Club, Wyndham, Flair, the Midnights, all these guys since the last pay-per-view. So it really picked things up for me here this week.
Yeah, same here. It was a lot better than those first 2 shows.
And now we move on to Worldwide for March 11th. And if this wasn't a timestamp, I should shoot myself. Jim Ross announces the new host of Worldwide Wrestling, replacing Tony Schiavone. It's Lance Russell.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Jim Ross. Welcome to Worldwide Wrestling fans. It is indeed my pleasure to introduce to you the new host of this program, a real broadcast veteran and the man that I've admired a long time. It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce Lance Russell to the NWA.
I got to tell you, I am so tickled to be here because I'm just like every other wrestling fan in the country. I have grown up watching NWA champions and have watched your work, and my golly, it's a pleasure to be standing right here with you.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's really good. It's an exciting time for me, fans, and Lance will be your host in upcoming weeks here on the program. And fans, we've got a great hour for you here today.
What have we got on the line today, Jim?
Fans, you're going to see the World Tag Team Champions, the Road Warriors in action. We're going to see the Varsity Club in tag team competition. Paul E. Dangerously will be here with his Samoan SWAT team and a young man that Lance Russell knows ever so well. Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner are here.
By golly, I'll tell you what, I remember Eddie Gilbert when he was just a skinny young athlete, and now he's full-blown and still a great athlete.
Of course, Eddie Gilbert from his days in Memphis, as his dad, Tommy Gilbert, was a great athlete there. And Lance, you saw him, as you said, as a kid, growing right up.
That's exactly the truth. He always had a lot of aspirations, and by golly, he's about right there at the top of them, Jim. We're sure looking at him.
He certainly is.
I love it. We get 2 by gollies in the very first opening segment of Lance Russell. It's just awesome.
Yeah, I love Lance Russell. He has such a different voice, and it's distinguishable. When he talks, you know exactly who it is. It's just a really great commentator. It sucks losing Tony, but when you pick him up with Lance Russell, it's not too bad.
Yeah, best choice you could possibly make as far as I'm concerned. We can kind of zoom over this episode. I don't have a whole lot of notes for this episode other than Lance Russell's debut. Rotunda and Spivey, the American Express reunite here in the NWA. Get a win over Mark Brown and Tony Suber in 2:45. Spivey over Suber with the Boss Man Slam. During the match, insert promo with Rick Steiner. Basically wants his TV title back from Rotunda. Obviously haven't completely squashed this TV title situation between Rotunda and Steiner yet, but for all intents and purposes, it's been squashed all right, I'd say.
Yeah, there's no coming back from what they did at Chi-Town Rumble. It's over.
A Road Warriors promo. I think it's the first time we've seen the Roadies since the Chi-Town Rumble, or maybe they did do a squash. I can't remember now. They named several teams, just like the SST and Paul E did a week or so ago. It feels like the team situation is up in the air. The Road Warriors name drop the Wyndhams, the SST, and even the Fantastics. Of course, we know they're gone. Road Warriors squash here. They get a win over Ned Brady and I don't know if it's Matt or Mac Anderson. I couldn't make it out, but 2.5 minutes. Doomsday Device on Anderson, and this might be the longest Roadie squash yet. It's just, again, they're extending the squash matches unnecessarily, especially for guys like the Road Warriors. It's cool to see them do a few more moves. I love just watching them murder people, but it's unnecessary. The stuff they do could finish somebody off, under a minute.
It's great to hear Iron Man when they come out.
Right.
That's really the only note I have for this show was Iron Man being played.
Vince Young in another squash, this time over Keith Steinborn, 5 minutes, still using the reverse sunset flip from the top rope. I don't understand how that move is a finisher. This is a move that you luck yourself into. It's not something you set up. It's a great counter if things go just right. You don't set people up for this move. So I don't buy it. It doesn't work for me. The guy learned how to do it, and he's having fun with it. That's great and all, but it's just doing it week after week is just stupid. Another Paul E promo with the SST. They're gunning for the Midnights. Again, they're doing the generic promo. They're starting to name drop all the teams, the Midnights, the Roadies, even the Fantastics are being mentioned here. So when these were recorded, obviously the Fantastics hadn't quite left yet. Then we get a match with the SST over Mike Jackson and Mike Justice. 4 minutes. Fatu with the splash off the top rope on Justice ends that. And we close out the Worldwide with Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner over Cruel Connection. Rick Steiner with the belly-to-belly on one of them in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. And that was the end of Worldwide. A very unceremonious episode of Worldwide there. We move into the nighttime. TBS, NWA World Championship Wrestling for March 11th. Kick things off with the Varsity Club promo. They show off their crappy-looking $10 briefcase Mike Rotund is holding. How do you have $10,000 to piss away, but you can't afford a better briefcase to put it in? That's what I want to know.
I have no idea.
So
that briefcase is rough.
Yeah. So Rotunda whips it out and opens it up, and inside this big, giant, crappy-looking briefcase, there's just 5 wads of money in this giant briefcase. Usually, when you see that, the briefcase is loaded with money, and it's all wrapped up nice and neat. This is just, I think it was 4 of them were wrapped in 20s and 1 wrapped in 50s. They couldn't even get them all in 20s or whatever, to make it look good. I don't know. This was cheap. It was bad. I mean, as far as the presentation, I like the idea of it, but just the overall presentation, it was just like they got to the studio and they told them, you guys got to come up with this yourself.
Here's the money, figure it out.
What I did like, though, however, was that they take the money out to show that it's real money. And they start pulling it out and dumping it into that giant fish bowl. And it's real money as they're stuffing it in there. It looks like it's legitimately $10,000 as it's wrapped and marked in $2,000 increments. Doc seems to be missing in action this week. Maybe him feeling the heat the week before wound up, turning into something more. I don't know. But yeah, Dr. Death not here this week. Midnight Express over Bob Cook and the Raider. Double flapjack on Cook. Gets that one easy in 5 minutes. And then we move on to a Midnight Express and Jim Cornette promo, which we will play right now.
Well, fans, we said the showdown is pending. It's really a tag team battle for survival. The Samoan SWAT team, 600 pounds combined weight. Paul Dangeroux's lips may weigh that much. I'm not really sure. But, gentlemen, I will say this. In all due respect to your great athletic ability, Jimmy, they've really got their work cut out for them with these Samoans.
I think there's a few differences between the Midnight Express and Samoans. Understand?
Jim, the difference between the Samoans and the Midnight Express, when they're on the beach, they're climbing palm trees, shaking coconuts out of them. When we're on the beach, we're sipping pina coladas out of those same coconuts. When they're on the beach, they're rubbing sticks together to form a fire to boil some guy's head. And we're rubbing suntan oil on some bronze bathing beauty like these pretty girls right out here, right, Jim?
Paulie, dangerously, you want to be like me so bad you go out and you get yourself an interview segment. You get yourself a bodyguard like I used to have. Jack Victory could not guard the sugar bowl at a tea party. Then you go out and you think to keep the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette away from that scrawny little pencil neck of yours, you go out and you get the Samoans. They're big, rough, tough, they're man-eaters, they're cannibals. Well, let me tell you something right now, Paulie. No two bearded, frizzy-headed geeks from Gilligan's Island are going to coast over here on a raft through the Pacific Ocean and get in the ring with the Midnight Express, beautiful Bobby and Sweet Stan in the National Wrestling Alliance and do anything but go down in defeat. We beat all the best teams, and I don't care if we keep the Samoans maybe from trying to chew on our fingers or bite on our legs. I hope Paulie feeds them. If not, I'll bring some fish heads to ringside so they won't be hungry. And if they've had their shot, and Samoans are going down to defeat, and beautiful Bobby Sweet Stan and Jim Cornette are going to be knocking on your front door, and we're going to have the back door bolted so you can't run and hide.
And a pretty good promo there by Cornette. Just a lot of comments there towards the SST and their characters at the time.
Yeah, Stan Lane's was pretty rough. Cornette's kind of led toward like the gimmicks that they were playing, and I don't think it was necessarily racist in the sense that he's calling these people bad. I think it's just more of him enhancing the characters that the SST were playing.
Yeah. And speaking of characters, we have the Iron Sheik following the promo of Cornette. Iron Sheik in the ring over George South. Match starts in progress. The match is already in the ring, and I'm sure it started in progress for a very good reason. It goes about 4.5 minutes. Sheik is just awful here. However, this is probably the best match thus far by him. That's not saying much, but he's hitting the belly-to-belly suplex, the Saito suplex. Camel clutch ends it, like I said, in 4.5 minutes on George South. For anyone following along, watching these shows on the WWE Network, listen to Jim Ross's commentary during Sheik's matches. I find them hilarious. It may be the most disinterested Ross has ever sounded on commentary ever for any reason. He says things, but they just feel so forced, and he just comes off bored and just trying to do his job by saying the things to get this guy over. But Ross has zero enthusiasm, zero interest during these Iron Sheik matches. It's like he wishes he was anywhere else but watching Iron Sheik wrestle.
I can't say that I blame him. It's hard to get through these matches.
We have our second Danger Zone. Again, Paulie hosting with Secret Service Jack Victory standing behind him. This week, he brings out Lex Luger as his guest. He's wanting to bring Luger out for ratings and get Luger to come out and flex for him, but Luger actually shows up in a sweatsuit or a jumpsuit or something like that. So he's covering up his entire body, which is just unusual for Lex. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they had him do that. He did that just, I guess, to screw over Paul initially, but Luger's not out there very long before he's joined by...
What's that smell?
No, it's just Michael Hayes. And Hayes comes out as well, and seeds start getting planted the last couple weeks with Hiro Matsuda scouting Hayes. And if those were seeds being planted, then this is definitely the fertilizer on those seeds. Imagine that, Michael Hayes fertilizer. But yeah, we've had Hiro Matsuda out here a couple times now scouting Hayes, and now Michael's out here randomly interrupting Luger in a promo for no reason because they have a tag team match coming up. But you know what? This was the best thing Hayes has done since we've started watching. It still wasn't great, but it was far more natural as he let that heel side out a little bit more than usual. But he was careful not to cross the line and make it overly obvious yet.
Yeah, I agree. Paulie basically drug the heel out of him when he asked if Luger is a free bird. Hayes got really upset with that, and like he got serious, and that's the Michael Hayes that I kind of enjoy, is when he's serious and the heel and that sort of stuff. So I'm assuming what's coming in the near future is when I might get some entertainment out of Michael Hayes, but it probably won't last very long.
And basically the gist of this promo is that Hayes will be teaming with Luger at the Omni against the Wyndhams, and that's actually going to take place tomorrow night, March 12th at the Omni. More on that in next week's episode. Yeah, that was pretty good. And then the segment ends with Lex finally removing his shirt and flexing for the fans and whatever to give the fans what they wanted, if that's what they wanted. That concludes the Danger Zone for this week. We get another TV title match with Captain Mike Rotunda putting up that $10,000 in the fishbowl. Wins this week over Cougar J in about 6 minutes with that guillotine stretch. He took a nice bump here on the floor during the match. Sullivan and Spivey mock Cougar, pointing to the fishbowl, trying to distract him. Not that he needed to be distracted. It's cool the money's there as a reminder to the challenger, but I like how they use it as a distraction as well.
Yeah, I like it as well. Just a constant reminder, like you said.
We get the first of two Ric Flair promos. This time he's coming out before his match. He's got a match coming up here in a little while. Flair cuts a promo. He says some nice things about Hero. Hero almost smiled here, and it's like what Jim Cornette said in an earlier episode. I think Hero got excited there. He almost blinked. But Flair, the promo's, pretty simple. Flair wants his belt back. He wants Luger's belt just because it's insulting that the man he beat at Starrcade has a championship too. Flair wants Lex's belt just because he doesn't like him. He wants his belt back from Steamboat. So Flair getting both guys over by name-dropping both guys. But obviously the big feud here is Flair and Steamboat. Sting over Julio Barrera, their second time in the ring, this time with the Stinger Splash, 3 minutes. I like that Sting's matches go short, that it doesn't expose him, but they go long enough than the old Magnum TA 20-second squashes so that Sting does get time to get some of his offense in. I like Sting being able to showcase what he can do well.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny, he hit Julio with the drop kick and he goes over the top. Barrera does. And
yeah.
goes through like the front row, the crowd in the front row, and the fans just scatter like crazy, like real fast as this big dude was coming. Then Sting goes outside and being the typical babyface actually checked on the fans, make sure they were okay before, and allowed Barrera to get some heat on him because as soon as Sting tried to get back in the ring, Barrera hit him. So I thought it was funny. It just looked weird that he checked on the fans before he got back in the ring. Typical good guy stuff. And then
Sting,
the promo.
Right, yeah, the promo. Yeah, Sting follows the match with a promo, does a surfer dude accent for whatever reason there for a bit just to start the promo off, but then he calls Barrera fat, and then he catches himself and takes it back and says, well, he's not fat, he's an athlete. So that was funny, but yeah, Sting basically cuts a quick promo, and then he says he's going to go back and check on the female fan because he threw Julio in her direction. So promos have been all over the friggin' map, but I have no idea what he's saying half the time, but this was a fun one.
Yeah, I like this one as well. This is the best one out of all of them during these shows.
And we get a Ric Flair squash match, which you don't get to see that very often. Ric Flair over Greg Evans in 6 minutes with a figure four. And if there's anyone that can make a 6-minute squash be entertaining, it's Ric Flair. He did a great job here. He wins the match, and he's sending a message to Steamboat. He refuses to release the figure four. He's grabbing the ropes. He throws referee Teddy Long out of the ring. He beats on Evans' leg after the match some more. It was a good Flair squash. It was a good match. It was a good way to keep Flair, I don't want to say over because he's Ric Flair, but it's a good way to keep him over and just chasing that belt back Steamboat.
Yeah, I thought it was a job well done. I think after he kept the figure four on, and then when he grabbed the ropes and pulled down, Greg Evans made this loud scream that made it sound like he snapped his leg, and it really, really did a good job of Flair making that statement that he talked about a week prior. This was just a really solid angle. It was very simple, but it was very effective, and it just shows you Flair is ready for his rematch, whenever that is.
And Evans kind of stuck out here, too, based on his attire. And he had actually worked in the Deep South promotion there for Assassin Jody Hamilton as one half of the Rock and Roll Rebels, which explains his Dixie flag hanging from his tights. And it also explains how he got the job here, because the Assassin at this point was in charge of booking the job guys for the TV shows. So we'll see Evans again before the end of the summer. Any idea in what capacity?
I have no clue.
One half of the Ding Dongs.
Sweet.
We get the Flair promo, a Flair match, and then we get another Flair promo. And I actually recorded this one. I want to play this for everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've asked Nature Boy Ric Flair to join us here in just a few moments. He should be on his way back out here. The former heavyweight champion of the world with a brutal attack on a youngster.
Huh? That's the way you and I used to do it, pal. You understood what it was to be a man. He found out. This is a man right here. He paid the price. Now, it ain't Luger, it's not Steamboat, it's Nature Boy. Bring that camera over here, Jackie. It could be you and I tonight, baby. Here's how it stands. I'm walking out here, and you know, pride and honor and wealth and family are all institutions that we love, admire, and cherish. You got eyes for me, don't you, baby? I don't blame you. But the bottom line is, right now, there's two people in my target zone. And you can ask roughly 5,000 women across this world what it's like to be in my target zone. I always get what I want. Woo! Bottom line. So Luger, you big blind Adonis, you're first. If Barry Windham doesn't get you, I'm going to get you. If the varsity club doesn't get you, I'm going to get you. Bottom line, Luger. And then Steamboat, you know where Steamboat is? He's in Japan making $100,000 on my money. He's back today. He arrives back today. He's back. And Steamboat, you know, in a very few short hours, you gotta look your maker in the eye. You gotta walk that aisle, Steamboat. And you, as the world champion, have got to beat the man. Believe it, like you don't like it, but you know it. Your wife knows it. Your neighbors know it. Ted Turner knows it. Jim Ross knows it. Hero knows it. Magnum knows it. Now, Steamboat, you have got to walk the aisle and beat the man. And believe me, pal, that's no cakewalk. Woo!
We've never seen him any more physical than right here in this studio. He's right, hours away from a showdown.
And there we go. The Ric Flair promo. Number 2 on this show, actually. And I'd rather have 2 Flair promos than 1 Flair promo and 1 Steamboat promo, so that worked okay for me.
Same here.
Yeah, another good Flair promo, though. Barry Windham with a single squash over Gator Gilmore in 2 minutes with the superplex. Windham's match is being kept short, obviously, due to his hand injury. He's not even wearing the glove anymore. He's keeping his hand taped up now. He is throwing punches and not even selling it in this match, though. In reality, though, he's still injured, and he still, at this point, requires surgery. Follow the match with a Barry Windham promo. He wants his belt back from Lex. This promo, I don't know. I think Barry took a big step backwards in this interview because at one point they asked how well his hand is, and he says his wrist can be 100% or 10%. It's whatever he wants it to be. And not Barry's best promo of 1989.
I did like how he says, even though he's a heel, he's like, I'm not going to use an injury as an excuse. Right. To me, he's kind of saying, like, I don't care if it's 10% or 100%. I'm not going to use it as an excuse, and I can beat Lex Luger anytime, any day, no matter the circumstances. I also like how he told Luger he needs to get on the mat and learn how to wrestle instead of hanging out in the weight room. I think that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah, not his best work, but it wasn't terrible either.
Another promo, this time with the First Family, Eddie Gilbert, Rick Steiner, and Missy Hyatt. They respond to the Varsity Club's challenge for the $10,000 and the TV title, held by Mike Rotunda. You have to actually listen to the promo, but it's this classic Rick Steiner playing the goofball here. Gilbert references his heelish ways again, as he has in some of the other promos in recent weeks. He cuts a fiery promo, but just does not work for me as a face stable. Missy's completely worthless in her role here. She's just standing there. She's no Miss Elizabeth. She doesn't look innocent. Also, like you pointed out, I know Missy's past, so it's hard to even buy into this. Gilbert's promos aren't very good as a face either, unless he has a reason to be cutting the promo, and at this point he really has no reason other than they're wanting some revenge on the Varsity Club. And Gilbert is a good promo, but he's a generic babyface. Without anything concrete for him to be coming after, it just doesn't do anything for me. The best part of this promo is what? The Rick Steiner wearing Eddie Gilbert's shades, and I loved when you took a picture and sent me a picture of that.
That was my favorite part. I also like that at the beginning. Ross says, yeah, if you beat Michael for the belt again, you can win $10,000. And Rick asked JR what he's going to do with $10,000. Like asking JR what he's going to do with his money now. So those are the little flashes of the Rick Steiner that got super over, but it's just few and far between.
We hadn't had any mention since the Scott Steiner promo at Chi-Town Rumble of that accident. So I thought maybe they realized what they did, they moved away from it. But here during this promo, not only do they, allude that Steiner was involved in this accident, Gilbert actually alludes that Kevin Sullivan was the one driving the car and caused the accident. So I gave them credit before I should have, I guess.
Terrible.
My problem here is Eddie Gilbert says Kevin Sullivan did it and made it sound like it happened during the Varsity Club period. Meanwhile, Scott Steiner said that it happened back in college. So I don't know. We get two conflicting stories here.
They changed their mind, huh?
One thing's for sure. Either way, it's not a wise booking decision.
Absolutely not.
And we've seen Dan Spivey with Dr. Death. We've seen Dan Spivey with Mike Rotunda. Now we see Dan Spivey with Kevin Sullivan here over Morgan Bastine. Although it says Vastine on the TV, it's actually Bastine. Morgan Bastine and Mike Thor in 445. Spivey with the bear hug again, this time on Bastine. During the match, we get an insert promo from Ranger Ross. Lasts like 5 seconds. So I don't even know what the point of that was. Ranger Ross will be making his debut soon. Spivey looks rough getting around the ring, like I said before, on those knees and his back even. It's a shame, the minute he found the right look and character here by 1989 was right after all the injury bugs started plaguing him. Poor Bastine, he just gets slaughtered in this match. 2 power bombs. Instead of getting pinned by these 2 massive power bombs, Spivey picks him up with this loose, weak, crappy-looking bear hug and gets the win that way. Varsity Club with the win here. Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner still teaming up, this time over Max Miles and Trent Knight in 6 minutes. Rick Steiner with the belly-to-belly on Miles. It's weird they even use Scott at the Rumble out of nowhere, and then we don't even see him again at this point.
Yeah, it's a train wreck. It's like they had an idea of what they wanted, and then they completely changed it a week later. So I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught Jim Ross, man, but the last couple times Missy Hyatt's been out there, I mean, he's Boing City on her, man. He's not letting back on some of the things he's saying. I caught him one of the matches. He said she has the greatest pair of big, beautiful eyes. And here Magnum says a lot of talent's in the ring. And Jim Ross says there's a lot of talent out of the ring as well. So Jim Ross a horn dog over Missy the last couple weeks.
Sounds like it indeed. I did pick up on that second one. I didn't hear the first one. Wow.
Yeah. Varsity Club promo. Spivey talks trash to the Road Warriors. Sorry, guys, I didn't record this one. The roadies have been missing in action since Chi-Town Rumble. Them and Steamboat. Who makes that decision? You take your World Tag Team Champions and your newly crowned World Heavyweight Champion and send them off to Japan for a month immediately after a pay-per-view. Yeah,
that makes no sense. I mean, the Road Warriors were already champions, so I get that. And plus, you have the U.S. tag title, so you can kind of do something there in the meantime. But you send your champion right after he wins the title to Japan. Like, you're not even taking advantage of him running the house show, like getting rematches with Flair or something on the house show to make some money. You got him booked immediately to go to Japan. Like, who does this?
Yeah, and I know when they went over there, the Road Warriors, I believe they teamed with Tenryu once in a six-man. I don't know if they claimed that was a world six-man title match or not, because obviously those belts have been forgotten in the NWA. But yeah, I think they most worked against Jumbo Shruda and Yoshiaki Yatsu for most of that tour. Steamboat also worked that tour, like I mentioned, and I think he did some tag team matches and whatnot, but I believe he only had one singles match, and that was actually against Tiger Mask number 2, which ended up becoming Misawa. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I just think it's pretty stupid. You're coming out of your pay-per-view with your 2 top world champions, and they're not even going to be around for the next month. Butch Reed over Joe Cruz in 240 with a flying shoulder block. I love Reed talking trash throughout all the matches. He just talks. He never shuts up and beats the living crap out of Cruz here and gets the win. Butch Reed, one of the many wandering around aimlessly right now. SST over Randy Mulkey and Bob Emery. Always good to see a Mulkey. The SST get the win in 4 minutes with Samu's back superplex and Fatu's splash on Mulkey. Of course, Mulkey had to do the job, take the bumps. We get another Ranger Ross insert promo here. I've never seen a guy cut 2 insert promos on the same show before. Interesting.
This is the same one.
Was it the same exact one? That I didn't notice.
They had the same exact thing again. It's like, I guess they expect people not to be tuning in at the start of their show, so they got to play it again towards the end.
I wonder if that was just a production miscue or mishap.
The NWA.
Yeah, they didn't even realize they aired it earlier. I don't know. The SST followed the match with an interview with Paulie Dangerously. During this, we learned that Secret Service Jack Victory will face Lex Luger at Clash of the Champions. The match won't even air on TV. They actually finally announced a match for Clash of the Champions. I don't think they call it by name, but they actually announced the match as a match in New Orleans. They don't even mention that it's a Clash, but it's actually a match that doesn't even air, so go figure. And once again, we'll have a Jack Victory Luger match at the Clash because Luger just wrestled the Blackmailer at the previous Clash. It's hilarious, though. If you listen to this promo, Paulie goes out of his way not to call it Clash of the Champions or even mention that it's on TV. Who thinks this is a good idea? I mean, literally, he keeps referencing that they're having a match in New Orleans, but you can't name the name of the show. You can't name that it's going to be televised. I don't even understand the point of any of this.
Yeah, I don't either. Is Turner paying attention to his product at this point?
I don't think Turner ever paid attention to his product. I don't think he understood wrestling. I mean, he knew it had gotten ratings, and I'm sure he knew some of the guys along the way when it was building up his TV station and his empire, but I'm sure he knew who Ric Flair was and all these top guys were. You have to know your guys that are making you money.
You gotta think he's smart enough to promote, and the only way you're gonna do that is when you announce things. And to say you have a show in the future in the Mid-South area or in New Orleans, that's the best you can do to promote it. Like, somebody has to be there to hold somebody accountable and say, hey, this isn't right. We got to get this show out a month ahead of time. I don't see a Raging Cajun Clash insert until this Saturday night on March 18th. That's like 2 weeks before the show.
Yeah.
I mean,
and even then, and we'll get to that because I have it in my notes. But yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And so now they've actually spent more time building up the Clash of the Champions, promoting a match that doesn't air on Clash of the Champions than they do announcing that Flair and Steamboat will wrestle that night. So that says it all. 6-man tag of crap. Michael Hayes teaming with the Junkyard Dog and Vincent Young in a 6-man win over the Cruel Connection and Rip Morgan. That's a pretty badass job guy team there. Ross marks out in this match for Junkyard Dog dancing. He says that's the most, that's the most movements he's seen the Junkyard Dog do in years, and that's a shoot. I know when you saw it, when I showed you a clip of it, you said that it looked like he was having convulsions or something more than dancing.
He's doing his best, I guess. But I think they came out to Vincent Young's music on this one, too, and I know that's the catalyst or part of it for what's about to happen. It's one of the things that I did pick up on this. I was curious why they went with his music over Hayes or the JYD.
Yeah, I haven't heard Dog's music since that first week he came out and to beat it for like 5 seconds. But it's funny that they do that because Hayes interrupts Raw's pre-match to continue his fertilization of these seeds, so to speak. And he's upset for this. So I didn't even notice it last week, but he says this is the second week in a row that his partner's music's being played instead of his, noting that he brought entrance music into wrestling, sort of. So he's upset that, these other guys are getting their music played. Certainly there's something there as he's doing this. And I did notice that as well when they came out. It was Vince Young music. The first thing I thought was, really, they're going to use his music? But it was explained there with the Hayes promo. Hayes does tag in, and then he refuses to tag back out and pins one of the Cruel Connection with the DDT. And we close the show with a Michael Hayes promo with Junkyard Dog and Vince Young. Hayes says the people at Turner better get their technical issues fixed so he can use his music next time. I think he calls this strike 2, and he says strike 3 and you're out, which that plays into something later on. Hayes promotes the Omni match with him and Luger against the Wyndhams again, and JYD does his best Akeem dance off the set as the show ends.
Yeah, it's funny. I think JYD was seriously having some fun, so good for him.
We finish up the weekend with the main event for March 12th. Iron Sheik over Crash Chandler in an awful match. Sheik is just immobile here. He goes to throw him in a gut wrench suplex, but then just flips him over and doesn't even take the bump with him. Crowd is absolutely dead. They could care less if the Iron Sheik's in the NWA. Camel Clutch ends it in 3.5 minutes. We get a Lex Luger promo, and then Russian Assassin 2, which I was shocked again. Jack Victory still working this gimmick, at least on the syndicated stuff. And went over Tony Suber here with a forearm or something off the middle rope in about 4:45. That was an odd match to stick on this show, just really weird. Yeah. Chi-Town Rumble comes into play here. They show the Lex Luger Barry Windham match. The match goes 10 minutes on the pay-per-view. They literally show the final 8 minutes on TV here. 8 of 10 minutes of the match is shown here on TV this week.
This is syndicated, so it's like local markets, right? Or is this the main event?
This is the main event. It's the main event, but they're beginning to syndicate it as well. So it's in syndicated markets as well as TBS. But yeah, I mean, they're giving away another title change on free TV within a matter of a couple weeks after the pay-per-view.
Mind-boggling.
Then we close the show with Mike Rotunda, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, teaming up against Dick Murdoch and Michael Hayes. Hayes comes in doing his garbage as usual, so he's so out of the element here against someone like Mike Rotunda. It's hilarious watching Michael Hayes try to wrestle Mike Rotunda. Murdoch, meanwhile, was so much fun here, matching the wrestling up with the Varsity Club and holding his own. Dickie never looked like he had a whole lot physically, but man, he could go and just do about anything in the ring, any style. In another era, I could see Murdoch working like Eddie Guerrero and having a great match. He may have been the one doing the bumping, but it would have been a great match in my opinion.
I think so too.
I wrote down here that the faces control the first 9 minutes of this match. The heels come back. They work 5 minutes on top. Doc misses an elbow. Hot tag to Murdoch. Dick goes for the brainbuster on Rotunda, but Sullivan trips him up, and Mike on top of Dick, or Rotunda on top of Murdoch sounds a lot better actually there. But yeah, Rotunda lands on top of Murdoch, and he gets the win, and the Varsity Club steal that one. At the end of that main event, my biggest question to you right now is, what the hell is going on here with this pay-per-view situation? I know it's still somewhat new to have pay-per-views, but you've essentially given away your entire pay-per-view sans Sting versus Reed and Hayes versus the Russian, which enough said there. You've basically given away your entire worthwhile pay-per-view on TV at this point.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You're giving away all the matches people would pay for. This sets a bad precedent. Like, if I bought this show and I tuned into TV, obviously if you're going to buy pay-per-view, watch the TV, I feel like anyway. And if I know that I can get these matches a week or two after the fact, I'm not going to buy it. There's no sense. There's no reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, they're giving away everything here. It's just inexcusable.
I mean, WWF, they give screenshots for like a month. You don't even get matches or highlights. You get screenshots, still photos.
Yeah, there was Bruce Pritchard had mentioned on a podcast it's been a couple of years ago now, but I can't remember which WrestleMania it was, if it was 4 or 5. I almost want to say it was 5, but somebody in production accidentally aired the finish of the main event. I think it was the Hogan Savage year, so I think it was 5, but I can't remember for certain. But they got in all kinds. Vince went absolutely nuts when it aired on TV on one of the shows. In general, you never showed the finish on TV, ever.
These guys are just giving it away almost every show for the straight 2 weeks after the pay-per-view free. Like, what are you doing? This isn't a house show.
Yeah, it's insane, and it gets worse. With the non-promotion of Clash of the Champions, and we'll see what happens with that on our next podcast. And now we're going to move on to the final week this week on our podcast. That's the weekend of March 18th, the NWA Pro. Kevin Sullivan's still there. He's at this point, as I mentioned, he's replaced David Crockett and Bob Caudle. We kick the show off with Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner. They're joined by Missy Hyatt. With a win over Johnny Meadows and Trent Knight in 5:20. Rick over Meadows with the belly-to-belly. Fans seem to be more focused on Missy. And at times the camera is too. And the camera's on her as much as they're on the match. I don't know if you saw this during the match, but it was just funny. Meadows does a drop down, and then instead of Rick Steiner running over top of him, Rick just drops down and gets down on all fours and gets in Meadows' face and smiles at him, and eventually and hits the belly to belly. So it was fun.
I liked also too, Eddie got him in a headlock, one of the guys in a headlock, and Rick gets down in the ring and just like lays on the ground looking at him laughing. Right. So Rick was having some fun with it a little bit, but
during this match, Meadows was not one of the greatest job guys of all time, and he wasn't doing a very good job here. And Kevin Sullivan even pointed that out on commentary. And here's Kevin, who's been feuding with Rick Steiner for months, and even he, Sullivan's one to always do these little shoots during his promos anyway, these ha-ha shoots, and he makes a comment here basically putting over Rick Steiner while trashing Meadows, and I got that right here on this audio bite.
He's got Meadows on his shoulder, right into the corner, into the turnbuckle. Tremendous power move as he slams him hard to the turnbuckle in the corner. And Meadows now on the mat, right at his partner, Trent Knight, who needs to reach up and make a tag. But here's Steiner right back to the attack again.
You don't need to reach up and make a tag. He needs to go back to the locker room and quit professional wrestling. This Steiner beats his brains in.
And I just love that there because Sullivan's like, he doesn't need to get up and make a tag. He needs to go to the back and quit because it just sounded so like real, like what Sullivan meant what he was saying. Before Steiner, and it sounds like he knows Rick too because he says before Steiner beats his brains in, because Rick was known to take some liberties in the ring, especially when guys weren't cooperating well.
That sounded like a shoot for sure.
Iron Sheik over Bomb Emery. The Sheik's starting to do the Nikolai Volkov gimmick here, wanting to sing the Iranian national anthem. I've never heard it. I don't know what it is, but I'm thinking it lasts longer than 5 seconds. If you watch Sheik here, he can't even hit the ropes. He looks just absolutely awful. I know I keep saying it, but this is the match where Emery drop kicks the Sheik, and the Sheik literally walks over to the ropes, slowly steps out onto the apron, and climbs down like he got drop kicked out of the ring, but like in slow motion. I grabbed a clip of it, and I'm going to be putting it up on our Twitter, so you guys go check that one out. It's Emery drop kicking Sheik, and Sheik just slowly walking over the ropes and climbing out lackadaisically and just dropping down off. It's hilarious. You guys got to check it out.
It's like he was leaving ringside instead of selling a drop kick. Just hilarious.
I don't know why he didn't just take a couple steps back from the drop kick and call it a day. He proceeded to like climb out of the ring to make it look like he took a big bump. It was awful.
Oh my goodness.
He can't be gone soon enough. Like, he's my least favorite guy right now, I think.
I think so too.
This is where they bring up the contest for the Wrestle War Music City show. Well, it's not Wrestle War yet. It's just called Music City Showdown pay-per-view at this point. And I think, what is it? Just so fans can win some tickets to the show?
Yeah, I think they said 10 couples or families would be able to win some tickets to this show. That's all I got out of it.
Missy Hyatt's wearing like an overcoat thing there, which she's like way too overdressed, but you know she's probably naked under there.
Probably.
Joe Pedicino knows. We get interviews from Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. It's Steamboat's first appearance outside of the Saturday night show, the promo he did where he said he was going to Japan. So this is like the second time we've seen a Steamboat promo since the pay-per-view. We get a Sting over Joe Kazana, Splash and a Scorpion in 4 minutes. It's funny watching Teddy Long run the ringside, and as Sting was coming down, there was no referee in the ring, and Teddy Long actually has to run past Sting to get to the ring just to get in there before Sting gets there. It's funny to see how off the NWA was, just the production and everything.
Yeah, I've seen that, picked up on that too. You would never see this in the WWF, ever.
We get the SST over Keith Hart and Johnny Meadows, and no, that's not a typo. Johnny Meadows actually wrestles twice on this show. Samu with the back superplex, and then Fatu with the diving splash on Keith Hart. Again, not related to the Hart family, not that Keith Hart, but yeah, Keith Hart was a good job guy. He took good bumps, and I'm glad that they chose him to get murdered here by Samu and Fatu to close this match out. Interview with Lex Luger. Bob Caudle conducts it. Lex is clearly, at this point, no doubt about it, on some type of supplements. His body has changed immensely in such a short period since Chi-Town Rumble. He's so much thicker here, just huge. Luger addresses his eating and workout regimen. I think he leaves out steroids. It still looks great, but just putting on mass.
Yeah, it's a shame he was that insecure that he felt like he needed to do that. I'm assuming that's what it is. From everything I've heard about Luger, he was very insecure. I think they said Scott Hall rigged him all the time, or Mr. Perfect, by just like moving his band on his leg or telling him that his abs look a little flat.
Yeah, pulling the tassels one or two at a time every night on the house shows out of his boots. Up next is a 6-man tag, and I kind of got excited at first because it's a main event. You got main event caliber names in there, and it's on syndicated program. We got the Varsity Club, Rotunda, Spivey, and Dr. Death, all three great talents teaming up here. Taking on, unfortunately, though, we have Michael Hayes, we have the Junkyard Dog, and we have Steve Casey. And I guess I shouldn't complain because it only went 4 minutes, but I mean, I was really shocked that this only went 4 minutes. It was like a squash match in disguise. Hayes and Dog did very little. Casey tags in, takes the Spivey boss man slam, and that was it. It was over just that fast.
Yeah, nothing to it.
Another Joe Pedicino knows, this time promo from Paulie Dangerously and SST. We also get an interview with Rick Steiner and Eddie Gilbert. They actually announce here that Rick Steiner's going to get his TV title rematch against Mike Rotunda at Clash of the Champions 6. I'm kind of glad we didn't. I'm a little over that match, but yeah, they sell that match as being part of the Clash here, and it doesn't. Happens. Take that for what it's worth. Obviously, I think they had booking plans, and they changed.
Sounds like every other week in this company. Booking plans change.
That wraps up the pro show. Not a whole lot going on that show. We go to Worldwide, where Lance Russell's hosting, and his color commentator this week is Ric Flair. Think about that. Lance Russell and Ric Flair host an entire episode of Worldwide Wrestling.
I'm going to sound like an idiot here, but it took me like halfway through the show to realize who the other guy was with Lance Russell. I didn't see it at the beginning. I don't think the show was complete where they showed him ringside, or I just wasn't seeing it.
Yeah, the intro was clipped off of this episode, yeah.
And I couldn't pick up on it. It took me a minute, and then he finally said something like, "Oh, dang, that's Ric Flair doing commentary? Like, that's awesome." So I definitely paid attention more after that. But, I didn't realize it until, like, maybe 15 minutes in.
It was really fun listening to them throughout. Kick off the show with the SST over Gator Gilmore and someone. I'm not even sure who it is. Oh, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention this ring announcer. I've never heard this ring announcer before. I have no idea who he is, but he's certainly from the South. He's got a Southern accent. He mispronounces someone's name in just about every match. It's terrible. I mean, the dude's just awful. SST over Gator Gilmore and fill in the blank. I don't even know who. Samu with that standing middle rope DDT in 4 minutes. Just another fun squash. Everything looks so real from them, and some of it probably is real.
It's unfortunate for the guy taking it.
Midnight Express over Trent Knight and Rip Morgan. I know Morgan's not ready for a big push here, but I think he belongs in a tag team. And I'm not knocking Trent Knight at all. I mean, hey, he's a former VIP Jobber of the Month, but I hate to see Morgan, relegated to these type of matches. These are basically squash matches, and pretty decent heel team here for a squash, I thought, though, seeing Trent Knight and Rip Morgan together. I was hoping this one would go a little long because, given who it was, Trent Knight and Rip Morgan, both capable guys, I thought maybe this would be a fun, because the Midnights work mostly 6 and 7 minute squashes. So, of course, what happens here when they're working guys they actually want to see them against, Paulie and the SST come running out 2 minutes into the match, and that goes the end of that. No contest about 2.5 minutes into the match, and the SST hold Cornette on the outside, let Dangerously take some cheap shots. Heyman gets his original Midnight Express heat back by beating down Cornette. So, yes, he lost the tag team, but he's gained a new tag team, a better tag team, and they beat the crap out of Cornette here, and it was a fun little segment. It was nice to see an angle being done on TV.
Yeah, it's like the first angle we've seen in quite a long time. So
yeah.
I
think this is the first angle we've seen at least since before the pay-per-view.
I was going to say, yeah, I think it is. Last real angle I remember seeing was the Roadies versus the Varsity Club stuff, as an actual angle. So yeah. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, the last thing I can think of that, if you even want to call it an angle, was the Flair and Steamboat stuff from the Clash, which that match had already been built up at that point. That was just another segment. But yeah, I mean, there's really been nothing. Not on this is the 4th week since the pay-per-view. Joe Pedicino knows, makes his debut on Worldwide now, and we get that Missy Hyatt promo again. Missy selling the Music City Showdown contest. Fans can win some free tickets to the pay-per-view. Sting over Max MacGyver in 2 minutes with a Stinger Splash and the Scorpion. And I mentioned earlier about that ring announcer. I was going to play the Sting intro here for you. He doesn't call him Sting. Just listen to how he introduces him.
In one fall, to my right, from North Carolina, Max McGovern. And his opponent from Venice, California, the Sting.
And I played the clip a little extra long because I just wanted to hear how over Sting was, even here March of '89. And I know I keep saying that, but it just blows my mind considering the guy hasn't had anything to do, just how over he is. But did you hear what the ring announcer called him?
The Sting.
The Sting.
And from Venice.
Yeah, from Venice, California.
Venice, California. I don't even think he said Beast.
I don't even think he said Max MacGyver. I don't think he said Max McGobber. So I grabbed a few clips and I spliced them together of some of his introductions throughout the program, of the SST, of Mike Rotunda, of Lex Luger's match, and of the Varsity Club who are coming up here in the main event. And I clipped them all together here, and I'm going to play them now for everyone. Just listen to the ring announcer.
There's one fall, and to my right, from Georgia, Frank Hunter, and his partner from Florida, Gator Gilmore, and from Simone, the Samoan SWAT team, Silver and Buck 2, and their manager, Paul E. Dangerously. And their opponent from Syracuse, Mike Ricconda, and from Georgia, Danny Spivey. From Chicago, Illinois, the world U.S. champion, Lex Luger. This is for the U.S. Tag Team title. This is at the Varsity Club.
Yeah, this guy was entertaining from beginning to end on this show. From Simone, the Simonans, Mike Ritundo. He refers to the United States title as the World U.S. title. So somehow it's a world title, but only in the United States. And then I don't even know what he says with the Varsity Club. He doesn't call them by name, so he clearly doesn't even know who they are. He doesn't have the names on the paper. And then on top of that, I don't even know what he says right before he says the Varsity Club. So yeah, I thought it was fun, so I grabbed a few of them out, and I had to play them for everybody.
Yeah, good stuff.
Back to the action. The American Express reunite again. Dan Spivey and Mike Rotunda over George South and Steve Casey. Casey lasts longer with South as his partner than he did with Michael Hayes and Junkyard Dog in the previous show. But the Anderson armbar from Spivey on South ends it in about 4.5 minutes. World U.S. champion Lex Luger over Gary Royal with the torture rack. This is the match where Ric Flair's he's on commentary for the whole show, but during this is really good. This is where Lance Russell, he's been there 2 weeks, and he's working this so masterfully. He's basically asking Ric Flair, why don't you get in the ring? How come you don't get in the ring? If you're such a great wrestler, you're not wrestling. Why don't we see you in the ring? And Flair basically says he doesn't have to, and Flair tells Lance that just for Lance, I'll get in the ring next week and I'll wrestle for you right here on Worldwide next week. And Russell sells it huge. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Ric Flair is going to be here next week. It was so amazing to see how easily Lance adapted to this national wrestling, to go from Memphis wrestling in that studio, appeasing to the Memphis-style crowd, to being able to handle just nationwide television with the guy, other than the WWF, the next biggest guy in professional wrestling. So just great job by Lance Russell.
A pro's pro, man. Truly one of the best. So, yeah, it's crazy to just be able to pick up and handle the business or the national stage like he did with it just 2 weeks. You could tell he loves the business, and he probably was keeping an eye on it just in case he did get the role. So he took it serious, and you can tell that, which is great.
And he's already become my favorite announcer here, along with Jim Ross, who does good on the big stuff. Like, I'll give Jim credit. He's a big-time guy. He's good on the pay-per-views. He's good on the clashes and stuff like that. But it wouldn't bother me at all if Lance Russell hosted most of the TV. Like, give me Lance Russell on Main Event. Give me Lance Russell on Pro, Worldwide. I would be far more entertained than I am with a lot of the stuff they have going on those shows right now. But, like I said, for him to come from a territory he'd been in for decades, the Memphis territory no less, and just adapt and handle these big stars, big angles, the big time, he proves here this week in this match and in the next match too, and I'll get to that in a minute, that he was simply a professional announcer, period. Not a wrestling announcer, just a professional announcer. He knew what to do, just period. One of the greatest of all time, Lance Russell. I can't say that enough. I can't put that over enough.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
And we move into our main event, which I don't even know if they had advertised this going into this show. I didn't know this was happening until it happened. But we had Kevin Sullivan and Dr. Death defending the U.S. tag titles against Rick Steiner and Eddie Gilbert, accompanied by Missy Hyatt. I don't know if there's a good reason or if it's just me, but the way they just completely forgot about Eddie's push and then neutered Rick at the pay-per-view, I should be super excited for this match. Like, these guys are getting, a big-time push. And instead, both me and the camera guys seem more interested in Missy Hyatt during this match, which is funny because you got a title match in there and we're still getting all these camera takes of Missy Hyatt at ringside.
It's like it's the first woman to come through the curtain and be on the show, so they got to push it as much as they can.
I loved watching Rick Steiner when he was in the ring with Dr. Death here. They really beat the crap out of each other. They hit each other hard. It was really fun. You could tell they were having fun. It was a good time. I would have liked to have seen a lot more of Rick Steiner and Dr. Death going at it.
Yeah, same here.
In fact, I think what I would have done if I was booking, and we'll fantasy book here just for 1 minute because I know the show's going long already. I think I would have had Steiner go over Rotunda here at Chi-Town Rumble and moved on to Doc as the next challenger because Dr. Death and Rick Steiner in a program, what great matches that would have been.
Yeah, I agree. That would have been awesome. Those guys are nuts, and they know how to work, so that would have been awesome.
So then Gilbert comes in. He starts taking the heat. The ref misses a tag to Rick Steiner. Steiner comes in anyway, so we get a melee. Now we got all 4 guys in the ring. Sullivan goes after Missy because Sullivan loves going after women. He went after Precious. Now he's going after Missy. That's when Eddie performs his favorite hold, the schoolboy. Eddie Gilbert from behind with the roll-up. As you pointed out before, it's the only way he seems to be able to win the big ones, but he gets the job done here. The schoolboy does it. Eddie Gilbert rolls up Kevin Sullivan, gets the pin in 9.5 minutes. We have new U.S. Tag Team Champions.
I was watching this and I was like, okay, they're not going to change the titles on a syndicated show after they basically destroyed their whole push. But here we are. They actually win the belts. And I was just like, are you serious? So like, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, I felt like they were, like you said, we talked about it throughout this show that they're kind of restarting the Eddie Gilbert push and the Rick Steiner. But I'm wondering if they maybe said, you know what, we messed something up here. Let's see if we can get that back. And maybe this was their chance to do that. But that's giving them too much credit. So I have no idea. This doesn't make much sense to me.
For anyone wondering how the ending played out, I recorded a soundbite of the crowd's reaction and actually just the announcers and everything that went on with the title change. So here we go with another soundbite.
Well, the referee didn't say it, Lance. The referee was over keeping Steve Williams out. He's telling Rick Steiner to get out. Missy Hyatt is saying he tagged him. But the referee didn't see it. Steiner takes matters in his own hand, charges in there after Dr. Death. Kevin Sullivan zeroes in on Gilbert, and look at Dr. Death go at Rick Steiner. Gilbert, this could be it. Gilbert, sit in. He's got that look in his eye. If I was Missy Hyatt, I'd find a place to go. Sullivan over, talking to Missy Hyatt. Gilbert slips in the heart, pulls him up. We have new champions. This is unbelievable.
tech timeout. Be right back.
I love the end of that. Like, Lance Russell's going nuts. Everybody's having fun, and we're going to take time out. We'll be right back. Just completely changes his demeanor to send it to commercial, because it's a pro's pro, man. I mean, he's a broadcaster. it was funny.
That's great. I liked it.
Riddle me this. Rick Steiner loses one title, gains another title within a matter of a few weeks. And this is likely what changes that TV title match at the Clash. It was supposed to be another Rotunda-Steiner match. And I'm not complaining that that match is being changed, but now Steiner has the tag title, so obviously things are getting changed. But somehow it feels like Steiner's been demoted. And even though he's won another belt, his push is just completely fizzled for me, and I can't answer it. So I can't put it into words. Is it just me, or is the push still working for you? Is the Steiner watch still working for you, Steve?
I mean, from that reaction, it sounds like it's working for the crowd, but I'm with you. I feel like the U.S. tag titles, they're secondary tag team titles. The Road Warriors are the champions in most people's eyes. I know great teams have held those belts, but when you have two sets of champions, world always sounds better. These titles just feel secondary. They're hardly ever defended. They're not in any sort of programs. It does feel like a demotion in a sense. I mean, yeah, you can have a championship, but doesn't mean you're in a prime position on the card. The TV title clearly means something. It's been held by, people like Arn Anderson and Mike Rotunda, who built that title up and gave it some prestige and makes it worthwhile, especially at this point. So having that title and being able to defend it every week on TV puts you in a prime position to be established. Whereas these belts, they can go months without defending them. I don't know where exactly we go, but it just feels like these titles hardly ever get defended. They're hardly ever talked about. Hell, you don't even see the varsity club wearing them half the time. So what do they mean? They're not even valuable in that sense. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. This just feels like a demotion.
And see, I love the U.S. Tag Team titles. I was a big fan of the Fantastics run with the titles, the Midnight Expresses runs with the titles. So I'm not necessarily against the titles, and they are the secondary tag belts. There's no mistaking that. But I always looked at them in some cases, and it depended on who had them as well. But I always looked at them as like the Workers title, like the Intercontinental title, where, like I said, the Fantastics, the Midnight Express, you were going to get a good match out of most of the champions at any time. So that's the way I always looked at the U.S. Tag titles. So I always enjoyed whenever we get one of those matches on TV or on a pay-per-view, usually the opener or whatever. But yeah, here it just feels like the belt's supposedly a prop to get guys over, and it doesn't work here. Like, Steiner and Gilbert have been so misused for the last couple of months that it just doesn't work. And you're right, the crowd did pop huge, and I'm not even against it. It's just that, are they popping huge because how over Steiner and Gilbert are? Or are they popping huge because they just sat and witnessed a title change? Because think about all the different times the crowds have popped for Money in the Bank cash-ins when guys like Jack Swagger were doing it. I mean, in any other scenario, nobody's going to pop with Jack Swagger going over.
Right. It felt like more like a pop because it was a title change, not because they wanted to see necessarily Rick Steiner and Eddie Gilbert. I even had on one of my notes from one of the shows prior to this one that the Eddie Gilbert, the heat or the crowd reaction on him was fizzling. I think it was on the show before this. It wasn't there like it was at the beginning of January for sure, but yeah, it's a demotion for sure.
I'm not taking anything away from Steiner or Gilbert. They're both great talents. I mean, I enjoy way more of their stuff than I don't enjoy, but you have to be really talented at sucking to book these guys into nothingness like this. That's more just the whole George Scott era.
Failure of booking for sure, 100%.
But I just had a lot of fun here with Ric Flair on commentary and unique pairing with Lance Russell, and probably the only time we ever see that ever. So that was really cool. Lance is already fitting in like a pro, so that was really a fun show.
Yeah, I liked it as well.
And we'll move on to our final show of this episode, and that's the World Championship Wrestling episode for March 18th. This is another episode where it's clear the WWE has grabbed a copy from an outside source because it's not master quality. But the show opens out of nowhere with the debut of the Great Muta. And Muta's standing there with Gary Hart and Hiro Matsuda. Just out of nowhere. There was no build to this. Just Gary Hart's been off TV since Abdullah left, and he's back all of a sudden, and Muta's just standing there, and it just seems like something they could have built up a little better.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the caliber of talent that Muta is.
Basically, the story here is Hiro Matsuda went to Japan, he got Great Muta, he's giving him to Gary Hart. My question is why? Why give away that talent? It's like, I don't know, I want Michael Hayes, but here, I got Great Muta for you, Gary Hart.
Right, I'm scouting Michael Hayes, but I'm going to give you Great Muta. You have fun with this one. Like, really?
And they're all over the place with Muta's name right here. Gary Hart calls him the Great Moto. The image on the screen says the Great Mota. His real name's Muto. Jim Ross actually calls him Muta. So the names will take a few more changes before they settle on Muta, or at least realize it's supposed to be Muta. easily, they refer to him as the greatest wrestler from the Orient, and he is absolutely, at this point, for me, the greatest wrestler from Japan. Just a phenomenal talent.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Just him standing there in his entrance gear, you knew you was looking at something special. And as soon as you seen him in the ring, it was exactly what you thought you was going to get. And he never disappointed. Just a tremendous, tremendous talent. We'll talk about it more when we get to his match. But yeah, great stuff.
We have the new U.S. Tag Team Champions, Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner, over the Enforcer and Max MacGyver in 4 minutes. Steiner with the belly-to-belly on MacGyver. And what's funny here is this show is clearly taped after the U.S. Tag Team title change show, because the syndicated shows are always taped prior to the TBS shows. What's funny here is they're not wearing the U.S. Tag titles. I don't even know if they were mentioned as the U.S. Tag Team Champions here.
I don't even recall them coming out with the belts.
Rick Steiner does a laugh in this match, and it makes the crowd pop. There's some crowd noise for Eddie, but when Rick tags in, there's far more of a response. I hate even saying this because I loved Eddie Gilbert. He was a tremendous worker, particularly as a heel. But my comments are not intended to slight Gilbert or Steiner, like I said a little bit ago. But as far down the ladder as Steiner's went already, Eddie Gilbert's just at the very bottom as far as the crowd, like the crowd reaction and whatever. Because that's what I noticed in this match was Steiner got some pretty good pops. Gilbert got nothing. So that's just where they are right now at this point.
Yeah, it almost makes you think, are they wondering if he's going to turn at some point, because he does have those tendencies in his gimmick, even though he is a face and has been. He's given no indication that he's going to turn. It just makes you feel like everybody's just sitting around waiting for it to happen.
Oh, we're going to have a turn before this show's over. I promise you that.
Clutch.
And then we get our very first Clash of the Champions bumper. And they don't announce anything, and we see it's a spot from the Chi-Town Rumble match between Steamboat and Flair. They don't announce that match is taking place at the Clash. They just air this clip and make you guess, oh, is that a match on the show? So it just says April 2nd, Clash of the Champions, Raging Cajun. And we get like a little insert video clip of Flair and Steamboat wrestling from Chi-Town Rumbles. They're doing their best to advertise the show at this point without having to advertise the show at this point.
It made sense for Clash 5, but to do it for another one makes absolutely no sense.
That must have killed George Scott to even put that on there. They must have forced him to even air that, because up until now it was just the old "We're coming to New Orleans" show, and now they actually have to announce that it's a Clash. We get Magnum TA with Sting. Sting still having those aspirations of 1989. No idea what those aspirations are, but he has them, so that's good. Give this guy something to do. Just anything. Just give him something to do. Let him do a one-off with freaking Secret Service Jack Victory. Just give him something to do. Samoan SWAT team over Mike Justice and Rick Allen in 4 minutes. Fatu actually does the alley copter in this match. Samu with the back superplex again on Justice. Fatu wants to do gets the pin with the back superplex, I think. And is this the match where Fatu wants to do the splash after the match and Paulie has to take his mind off it by handing him his cell phone to play with?
Yep, this is the one.
Okay.
So awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because Samu gets the win. Fatu doesn't get to do the finisher that he's been doing. And so Fatu climbs up to do it, and they're trying to talk him down. And he's not listening, so Paulie just hands his cell phone up to him, and Fatu starts playing on it, pushing buttons on it. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah, it's good.
We learned during this match that the SST will wrestle the Midnight Express at the Clash. I think the only guy who's having better matches than the SST right now is Michael Hayes.
Right.
During the match, or it might have been after the match. I think it was during the match. So Paulie joins commentary. I have in my notes here, and I remember this comment. He's still ripping on Randy Rose. It says the difference between Elvis and Randy Rose is Elvis still makes money. So basically, yeah.
I really did that. That was hilarious.
Yeah. Varsity Club promo. Kevin Sullivan, if you paid attention, he's actually changed his gimmick at this point. He's no longer the Taskmaster. He's not wearing the cloak anymore. They refer to him as the coach during the promo, or at least Doc does. He's wearing a sweat jacket, a whistle, the Boston Red Sox cap. So Sullivan's more of a coach gimmick now, and it only took him a year to figure this out, that, maybe that might work better with the Varsity Club.
Yeah, I don't know what took so long.
Rotunda's still out there pimping his $10,000 if he's beaten in 10 minutes for the TV title. They introduced the Varsity's personal accountant, Chip Burnham. I'm not really sure who this guy is. Sounds like a name I've heard Tony Schiavone mention before, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just imagining things in my head. I don't know if the guy worked backstage. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's just somebody they pulled off the street. I don't really know where they go with this. I don't think he ever appears again, so it's very random, but they have this Chip Burnham guy hold the fishbowl, and Doc's still begging for the studios to get air conditioning. We move on to the in-ring debut of Ranger Ross and Lee Scott. They made a big point to put over Lee Scott here as making his debut as well, which I just thought was weird because Lee Scott was really nothing more than a jobber. Ranger Ross comes out to the old Corporal Kirshner theme, gets the win with the combat kick, basically a super kick. Lee Scott runs right into it in about 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Jim Ross will beat this to death, but Ranger Ross was part of the first troops to enter Grenada. Ross does a Ronald Reagan impression during this match. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't.
It was different for Ross. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Oh, no. Yeah, it was Jim Ross. Yeah, there's two Rosses, and I'll get to that in a minute, too. I'm probably one of the few that would say this, but I thought Ranger Ross actually looked good here. Like, he was solid because he wasn't sloppy. For a guy with limited background and history in the business, it was impressive for his experience level, basically. He seems like to be a natural, honestly, and I've seen a lot of guys rip him apart, and reviews and things like that in the past, but he didn't offend me here.
Yeah, I didn't think he looked bad. He did that dive over the top. I thought he did pretty good. I don't know how much experience he has at this point, but yeah, he looked gifted in the ring. Like with experience, he could have done it.
The one thing I thought he did do wrong here was he gave Lee Scott just way too much, especially for a debut match like this. Like, to give the job guy this much offense was just a little too much for me. But Lee Scott trying to impress as well. He goes up for a top rope elbow and misses, but you don't see that very often from a jobber, whether they hit it or not. I just really like this. If people were expecting me to dump on Ranger Ross, you're surely disappointed at this point. Then maybe the worst thing about Ross is that he shares the same last name as Jim Ross, and it confuses me in my notes unless I write their names all the way out, which sucks because I like abbreviating things. So that's about the only bad thing I can say about Ranger Ross. He needs to change his name.
I don't think that's happening.
Back with the Danger Zone. This time it's with the Junkyard Dog, and I feel at this point we go from Ric Flair to Lex Luger to the Junkyard Dog. One of these things is not like the other. It's like they've already turned this segment into a jobber segment.
It's getting there.
They do the old gimmick where Dangerously asks Dog questions and then pulls the microphone away before he can answer it. Finally, Dog grabs the microphone and says a few words, and then he just walks away after saying his piece. This was worthless. It was pointless. I don't know who thought this was a good idea. Why even have this segment? I mean, what was the point? If I'm supposed to believe Paulie paid for 3 minutes of this crap, I mean, I'd ask for a refund.
Yeah, I think so too.
Magnum TA with Ranger Ross. Nothing particularly ear-catching here. He was perfectly fine here in the promo, too. He didn't really stutter or anything. He didn't have anything to say, but it was still better than a Steamboat promo. And only thing I got... I didn't really get anything out of this other than, he basically name drops the Iron Sheik, obviously, America versus Iran. So other than that, there was, again, just like the match, nothing bad here to say, really, about Ranger Ross. I mean, it wasn't a great promo. It wasn't even a good promo, but it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. And that's followed up by an Iron Sheik promo. He starts to do the Iranian anthem gimmick again. It doesn't even sound like a real song. I think I counted this time. I think it lasted about 6 seconds. He mentions Lex Luger and Steamboat. I think in between all of his random ranting, he name drops Ranger Ross, but in general, he's just all over the place. And it's funny because I just watched a Steamboat versus Colonel Mustafa match from the summer of '91 in the WWF, and that match goes about 4 minutes before Steamboat pins him. So it's just funny thinking of Iron Sheik here calling out Steamboat for a world title match. Just no thanks. Then we get an Iron Sheik match. Gets the win in a camel clutch, 3.5 minutes over Dwayne Bruce, who would go on to become Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker. There's a spot in the match, too, and I'm glad I made the note because I would have forgot. Buddy Lee Parker goes for a crossbody off the ropes, like he's running off the ropes, and he comes and hits Sheik with a crossbody, and instead of taking a back bump, Sheik just collapses. They just, crumple to the mat. It's just awful. Sheik's just awful. Every week it's something new. Sting over Snake Brown. Oh, you might have. I bet you like this match. Sting over Snake Brown with a splash and a scorpion in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. So we have Gator Gilmore, Crash Chandler. Now there's Snake Brown. Good old Snake Brown. This is a fun one. Fun mannerisms, facials. He's shouting, running around and he's shouting random nonsense. And Sting even has some fun here. He says, "You're a loud one. I love it." So I didn't know if you paid attention to that, but it was fun.
Yeah, I like the dude's hair. It was wild, crazy, and those are the type of jobbers I like to watch. They're fun. So he made it interesting for Sting. At least they gave him something in a jobber, I guess.
Yeah, and it was fun to see Sting play off of him because most wrestlers wouldn't even have played off of him. So Sting even acknowledging the character, that was fun. What was weird here is they took a commercial break or went to a bumper plug or something during the middle of this match. We move on to a Ricky Steamboat pre-tape interview with Jim Ross. It was recorded from the Omni. Steamboat's back from Japan. This was actually a good promo. Actually, the only good promo Steamboat's cut since he's been back. It's almost as if someone wrote it out for him and he memorized it. It was a fast-paced promo. He never slowed down. He actually sounded like a wrestler here. shouting and fired up. It was everything he hasn't been on the mic since his return. This feels so different that I just can't buy that he didn't have this written out and memorized and planned going into this promo.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he had intensity. He wasn't stuttering over his words, and he delivered it perfectly. So I'm with you. I think it sounds like it was something that was written for him, and he practiced it a lot before he had to cut it.
Because, yeah, it was, after all this time, it was the only promo worth listening to of Ricky's. He was very good. And I apologize, everyone out there. I meant to take an audio bite of that, and I didn't grab the sound clip, so I do apologize. But we move on. Mike Rotunda with the club in his corner over Richard Sartain in a world television title match with the guillotine. Rotunda over in 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Any idea who Richard Sartain would go on to become?
I don't know.
He would become the other half of the Ding Dongs.
Okay. Well, they don't last very long either.
If any of you guys go online and you go and watch this match, the Rotunda versus Sartain match, can you explain to me how this guy qualified to get a push? And I put push in the quotation marks, but how this guy got a push as the Ding Dong? He was not very good. So for them to select him as a character they had actually planned on pushing, I just don't get it.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
The only cool thing in this entire match was at one point, Mike Rotunda picks his knee up, and Sartain runs smack dab headfirst right into it. It looked like he knocked himself out.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. And I think Ross sold it. He's like, oh, that was a big one or something like that. Yeah, that was, he destroyed that dude, or the dude destroyed himself.
And it was right around this time on the show that they announced that they're going to be moving to center stage here in the next couple weeks. So there's changes coming, everyone. Ric Flair promo, also from the Omni, claims he's going to be the 6-time champion and beat Steamboat for the belt. Just another Ric Flair promo. 6-man tag team action with the Junkyard Dog, Dick Murdoch, and Steve Casey over the Raider, Chance Myers, and John Brewer. JYD over Brewer with the headbutt in 3:15. I love the Raider here rocking the Assassin's gear. I don't think it's Jody Hamilton's, though, because it would have been a lot more loose. Assassin number one, much larger guy than the Raider. But I like it. You know, this is a pretty simple, quick squash. Murdoch got in his elbow across the throat on the apron, which is one of my favorite moves, so I love that. And Casey has a really nice drop kick. He got that in here, so it was okay. Nothing offensive. 3 minutes in and out, I'll take it. The only thing cool here, and I grabbed a video clip of this will also be up on our Twitter, is there's a point where there's miscommunication, and Casey wants to throw the jobber into Dick Murdoch, punch him or knee him or something like that in the corner, and Dick just sidesteps the jobber and lets him go tumbling out of the ring, and it's just pretty funny. And I grabbed a video clip of that, and that'll be up on our Twitter. Promo from Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner. They're accompanied, of course, with Missy Hyatt. Gilbert issues a challenge to Rotunda for $10,000 in the TV title. So Gilbert goes from feuding with Flair and Wyndham to wanting the TV title belt, which makes no sense because he's taking that from Steiner if he goes for Rotunda's TV belt. So just none of this made any sense to me. Does Rick get the belt and Gilbert get the money? I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea either. It's hard telling what they're going with there.
We get Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Dan Spivey with Coach Kevin Sullivan over Jerry Price and Greg Brown in just 2 minutes. Spivey with the power bomb and the elbow, so maybe we're moving back away from those stupid bear hugs. Match only goes 2 minutes. Did you see Spivey bust out an enziguri in this match? And it looked good, too.
Yeah, it looked awesome. And for a dude that size to be able to do that is pretty insane.
I just can't figure out how he pulled that off, but then he acts like he can't move around the ring when he's hitting the ropes or doing simple moves. I love seeing Doc and Spivey team up, and I'd love the visual of seeing them standing across the ring from the Road Warriors. That would just be so cool. The Great Muta, or as it says on the screen, the Great Mota, accompanied by Hiro Matsuda and Gary Hart over Cougar J. This is the debut of Muta in the ring. It's too confusing for me forcing Hiro and Gary Hart out there at ringside because Matsuda had already given Gary Hart Muta at the top of the show as a gift, and now Hiro Matsuda is still following him around, so it's kind of hard to figure out what exactly is going on there with two managers out there.
Luckily, the talent is there from Muta to overcome this. But if it was a lesser talent, they'd be dead men walking with this, what they're getting handed right now.
Yeah, and I know Hiro's not out there with Muta for very long, but it just seems forced because they're both Japanese. I mean, it just seems like something that in the back that they're like, well, they're both Japanese, so just send them out there with them because that would make sense. So it's just, I don't know. Sounds like a Jim Herd thing. George, I don't know who did that, but it just makes no sense. And to see two managers out there with one guy, and I don't know. I don't care for either guy with managing Muta. I would have liked to see something completely different, but Muta, man, he overshadows his managers, no doubt. Just so good, so quick. The amazingly fast strike, the way he drops the elbow, just so fast, and that plancha dive to the floor, and then the flip back in the ring. It's our first look at Muta, and just amazing, just different world wrestler. Like it's just a whole new level of wrestling when you see this guy get in the ring.
The note I have is you can tell when someone has it, whatever it is, and as soon as he takes off his mask, you can tell he has it. Just his presentation, and then you see him work, and he's just on a whole other level. He's so graceful, so smooth, and so talented in the ring. I love those snap elbows. I like how he snapped off everything he did, like the super kick, doing the elbow, the springboard elbow in the corner.
Right.
Just everything he did, he just snapped it off with authority, emphasized the impact and what he was doing, and it just made just a simple elbow on the ground stand out. It makes you want to see it. A whole nother level. Just an amazing, amazing talent.
And it was so nice to see Muta here in the big time now, because he had worked Florida before and he'd worked Puerto Rico before. And then I think he just was finishing up a run with Dallas right here, right now. And there was nobody in Dallas for him to work. I think he was working a little with the Von Erichs and then also with Jimmy Jack Funk. And there's no way he was having, barn burners with Jimmy Jack Funk like he could here with some of the guys here. So it was nice to see Muta get the call up to the big times here.
Can't wait to see more.
Was there another promo here with Gary Hart and Muta and company?
Yeah, basically he said he's as bad as they come. It was just short and sweet, and they just walked off.
Well, that's that's all you really need to say. He definitely looked as bad as they come. And to finish that match, I forgot to mention, in case anybody's wondering, was Muta hadn't debuted the moonsault here yet in Turner. I think he just gotten whipped into the corner and did a spinning thrust kick as Cougar J rushed in right to the chest and covered him. But yeah, so we haven't had the debut of the moonsault yet. I just thought that was important to put in there. We get an odd tag team of Butch Reed and Rip Morgan, which I guess that's a step up for Morgan, but a step down for Reed as they team up and go over Bob Emery and Tony Suber here in 5:45. Reed with the flying shoulder block on Suber for the win. Has Hiro Matsuda abandoned Butch Reed? Because the joke's on Hiro Matsuda there, not Butch Reed. Because there's no Hiro at ringside for this match, yet he was at ringside for the Muta match, even though he's not really Muta's manager. So there's all kinds of weird crap going on here. It looks like Bob Emery's been taking some of Lex Luger's supplements here lately, but don't get me wrong, he doesn't look anything like Lex Luger, but he is starting to shape up here.
Yeah, that's no lie. He was getting pretty heavy there.
And as I mentioned, for a Butch Reed, Rip Morgan makeshift tag team match, this match goes 6 minutes. Certainly felt longer than it needed to be for a makeshift team, but it was nice to see Morgan get some offense in and actually see what he's capable of. Rip definitely belongs in a tag team, but not this tag team. Weird and just a pointless match for everyone involved. We return from a break and Butch Reed's out there for a promo, and where's Rip Morgan? He's nowhere to be found. No Hiro Matsuda either, though, which I found interesting, but I just thought it was funny. Butch had just teamed with Rip Morgan, and then he goes over to cut a promo, and Morgan's just disappeared.
Typical.
And we close the show with a big main event. I know you've been looking forward to this one from the March 12th Omni show. It's Lex Luger and Michael Hayes teaming up against Barry and Kendall Windham. The Omni looks awesome here, by the way. The lighting, the way the camera's set up, just everything looked really cool about the Omni here for this show.
I think so as well. It looked great.
The story of this match is Michael Hayes doesn't do a whole lot in the ring, just some locking up and some breaks against the rope. Match goes on a few minutes, and Hayes is in the ring with Barry Windham, and they back up into the corner, and Luger randomly runs over and slaps the injured hand of Barry Windham, and the crowd pops big. Kendall Windham comes in to distract Luger after they do that spot, and that's when Michael Hayes gets down behind Luger, and basically Kendall Windham and Michael Hayes do the high-low. Kendall nails the big left-handed lariat on Luger as Hayes trips up Luger from behind, so Hayes essentially turns heel right there.
Yeah.
They hit the old double goozle, the Midnight Express move, and take out Luger, and basically that's where Michael Hayes does the heel turn. It was a really nice-looking move, I mean, for Michael Hayes and Kendall Windham putting it together.
Yeah, the lariat was awesome. He nailed that lariat.
Yeah, it was really good. Well, the Windhams and Hayes with the triple beat down there, and then they do a dangerous-looking assisted DDT. Yeah, Hayes hooks Luger for the DDT, and then Kendall grabs Luger's legs and lifts him up in the air, and the timing's off, man, and they drop Luger right on his head.
Yeah, it looked bad. It didn't look safe at all. I don't know what the point of that was. Just let Hayes drop the DDT and get out of the way.
We close the show with Michael Hayes rolling out of the ring and a very angry Jim Ross asking him to answer for himself for what he just did to Lex Luger. And here's the final sound clip of the show.
Well, Luger slapped the hand of Barry Windham. Windham's right hand really injured. And Luger jumps. Oh, Michael Hayes! He just hit Luger from behind. And Luger's nailed with Kendall Windham's clothesline. What in the heck is going on? Hayes and Kendall Windham. Michael Hayes has snapped him. I mean, the people here are living. Michael Hayes, what a double DDT on Lex Luger. What in the world is going on here? what you did take the money from those Japanese people.
No,
I'll tell you,
I ain't got to tell you nothing. For too much. Mr. Michael Nice Guy, right? Ain't got time to interview me. Ain't got time to play my music. I told you, strike 3, and you're out, Jack. But let me tell you something. When you want a punk, go get him, because he's a boy. When you want a man, you come to me, because I'm the real McCoy. I told you before, heaven don't want me, and hell's afraid I'll take over.
So you taking the money. What did he have to do with it? What did he have to do with your money?
It's my American prerogative to make any choice that I want. And now, you know, it feels so good to be so bad, Jim Ross. Now you understand. You come to Atlanta, brother, you better watch the bad streets, and especially the ones I run. And I ain't just talking about Atlanta, I'm talking about the world. Because nobody, Jim Ross, nobody has ever got in my way, dictated what I'll do. Now you'll find out exactly what. I gotta go.
Yeah, yeah, right. Luger's getting back up to his feet. Hayes is leaving. This is appalling. Fans are running out of time. We'll talk more about this next week.
Okay, 3 takeaways from this promo for me. 1, I loved how Jim Ross says, you took the money from these Japanese people. That's just, it sounds so ridiculous the way Ross says that. But 2, Hayes claims one of the reasons why he's turning heel is because he doesn't get any promo time. This dude's been talking on every frickin' show since we've been doing this. And then 3, Hayes admits he's been a face for 2 months, and that's too long. And I can only say one thing to that, amen. Far too long, Michael Hayes is a baby face. So Luger gets up, and classic heel Hayes just takes off as soon as Luger starts to get up in the ring, and that's the end of the show.
Yeah.
And how funny is it that the last thing you, Steve, get to see on this episode is Hayes turning on your boy Luger?
I feel like it's a step down for Luger, going from a feud with Barry Windham and Ric Flair to having to deal with Michael Hayes and his terrible wrestling. And I know this gets worse in a couple months or in a month or so. So I'm not looking forward to that at all. I thought the angle was good. The promo out by Hayes was good at the end. The DDT was dangerous as hell, but it worked. All in all, it was a job well done by all the guys involved, but it's not a fan of Michael Hayes at all. I don't really care to see what he has to say or do. So this doesn't do much for me as far as the feud. Nothing I can do about it now or then.
Yeah, it just shows you the pros of some of these guys are, though, because the angles on these shows have been few and far between, but when they've been executed, they've been executed very well with the guys involved. So kudos to all the wrestlers that were involved in these angles for getting them over and being pros and knowing how to do it. It's good for them. And just real quick, we don't have footage of the main event for March 19th, but I do have quick results, and I just want to go over that because of the main event, so I'll do that real fast. It'll only take a minute. We had the Midnights over David Heath and Julio Barrera in 2 minutes with the rocket launcher. Rick Steiner over Kevin Sullivan in 7 minutes with a sunset flip back into the ring. And I thought this was a pretty cool main event here of Ric Flair and Barry Windham over Lex Luger and Eddie Gilbert in about 18 minutes. Flair pinned Gilbert when Windham hit a lariat on Gilbert, as Gilbert had Flair covered with the O'Connor roll-up. So that sounded like a cool match. I would have liked to have seen that. And the fact that there's times marked on these matches and the results makes me think that show might be floating around out there somewhere. And that's really why I was just running over the results, because I was hoping if somebody has this footage somewhere, please put it up somewhere. Let's show the world. I mean, I'd love to see that match.
Yeah, me too. That sounds awesome.
Okay, and now it's rant time from me. Outside of Joe Pedicino knows, you wouldn't even know there's a frickin' Clash. In fact, they're not even calling it by the Clash yet other than that bumper. It's that show in New Orleans is basically what we're getting. And George Scott is literally, and on purpose, hiding this Clash from the fans. He literally doesn't want anyone to know that there's going to be a show. He's in fear that they will lose money on their house show revenue that's featuring Flair and Steamboat on the house show loop if they give him Flair and Steamboat on TV for free. Hello, asshat. You just gave away your entire pay-per-view on your TV for the last several weeks, including Flair versus Steamboat. So I don't even understand the idea that's going on in your mind that it's a sin to show the Clash match, but you can show the frickin' pay-per-view match. I can't even pretend to understand the guy's thought process here. He's so worried about house show revenue, he's ignoring there's a freaking Clash on a TV station owned by the guy that owns the freaking company. You dildo! Sorry, I had to get that out.
Yeah, that says it all. It really does.
Yeah, no, and not much will be said about George Scott, at least beyond our next episode, because that'll be the end of George Scott, and we'll get to that story next week. I want to thank everyone for joining us and sticking with us on this extra long edition, but it was just so much to fit in, and we had to get it in to keep going, and I appreciate you guys for sticking with us for this long. Steve, once again, thanks for being here. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. This is a lot of things going on in these episodes that we needed to talk about, so it's a little long, but I hope you guys enjoy the product here. It's been fun.
And just so you know, before we walk into the next episode without anyone knowing what's going on, we're going to do 3 weeks of TV, and that also includes Clash of the Champions 6. We will not be doing a watch-along, not only because I don't want to do a watch-along of a 55-minute Flair Steamboat match. I just don't know how I can do that. Just sit back and enjoy that on your own. But we're going to be covering the next 3 weeks of television, and that includes Clash of the Champions in the middle of all that. So that's what we'll be doing next time. Steve, I appreciate you being here, man. Talk to you next time, buddy.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Thanks one more time to the Retro Network. Jason, Mickey, and the crew have an outstanding site covering just about everything you can think of from decades gone by. You can follow them on Twitter at TRN Social and make sure to visit their site, theretronetwork.com, for a variety of articles and podcasts covering everything that is retro, from movies to cartoons to music to toys and so much more. Special shout out this week to the House Show Podcast, the trio of Kevin Decent, Matty Treats, and the Educator of Excellence, Mr. Matt. The House Show Podcast covering 1990s WWF, specifically specializing in the In Your House pay-per-view genre. You can find them on Twitter at TRN House Show. As for our show, we encourage everyone to give us a follow-up on Twitter at Wrestling Grenade. That's RASSLIN Grenade. Make sure to follow us now for your shot at winning upcoming prize giveaways in the near future we have planned. And remember, the Wrestling Memory Grenade is now up on all your favorite podcast streaming apps, from iTunes to Spotify to Google Pod, Stitcher, Overcast, and so many more. Thanks once again to all of our listeners, and remember to spread the word to help the Grenade grow. We appreciate your support and hope you continue to listen. And for my partner in crime, Steven Eckstat, this is Ray Russell saying from pillar to post and coast to coast, you pull the pin and we'll pick up the pieces right here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. See you next week. Don't miss it. Be there!
It plays little howdy doody on your coconut. Ho, ho.